Hello, everyone. I'm excited to share a true scary bedtime story with you today. This story might help you drift off to sleep. But before we begin, make sure to snuggle up in your blankets and close your eyes. I know some of you are listening to this story to help you fall asleep. So before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. As you relax, I wonder where you're listening from. Maybe a cozy bedroom or perhaps a comfy living room. Either way, get ready for an adventure that might just tickle your imagination. Before we begin, take a deep breath and settle into the comfort of your bed. Feel the soft support of the earth beneath you, steady and strong, just as these stories have stood the test of time. As I count down from 10 to 1, let go of any lingering tension in your body and allow the peaceful energy of this moment to wash over you. 10. Let your shoulders soften. 9. Feel the comfort of your bed beneath you, as if cradling you in warmth. 8. Know that you are safe, and tonight's story will carry you gently into sleep. 7. Close your eyes and feel the rhythm of your breath, steady and calm. 6. Imagine the sounds of nature all around. A soft breeze, the rustling of leaves. 5. Feel your body relax more deeply, surrendering to the peaceful night. 4. You are drifting now, letting go of any remaining thoughts. 3. Each breath takes you deeper into relaxation. 2. You are fully at peace, ready to dream. 1. Now, let the story carry you away into a world where anything is possible. So, as you relax, know that you are part of a tradition that spans generations, where stories like this one have lulled countless others to sleep. Let this be your moment of peace, your escape from the rush of the world. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let the adventure unfold as you drift further into restful sleep. And now, we begin.
Once upon a time, in a quiet little neighborhood, there was a friendly man named Tom. Tom loved living in his small house with a big backyard filled with flowers. He liked to wave at his neighbors and chat with them when they were outside. But one of his neighbors, Mr. Thompson, was different. He had lived next door to Tom for many years, but he was always a bit strange. Mr. Thompson rarely smiled. Instead, he spent most of his time in his house, only coming outside when he thought no one was looking. Tom would often see him through the window, staring blankly at nothing, as if he were in another world. One day, Tom noticed something even stranger. Mr. Thompson had started acting more distant. He would stand in his yard, not moving for long periods, like a statue. Tom was worried about him. I should check on him, Tom thought. But every time Tom wanted to go over, he felt a strange pull, like something was stopping him. Maybe Mr. Thompson preferred to be alone, but that didn't sit right with Tom. He knew that everyone needed friends, even if they were quiet. The next morning, Tom woke up and had coffee as he always did. As he sipped from his favorite mug, he glanced out the window at Mr. Thompson's house. What he saw made his heart race. The house looked completely empty. The curtains were drawn tight, and the grass was overgrown. It was as if no one had ever lived there. Tom rubbed his eyes, thinking maybe he was dreaming. But when he looked again, it was still empty. Feeling uneasy, Tom decided to go for a walk. He wanted to see if other neighbors noticed the strange leftovers of Mr. Thompson's house. As he walked down the street, he saw a few people chatting. At first, he felt relieved. Maybe someone knows what happened to Mr. Thompson, he thought. But when Tom asked them about him, no one remembered Mr. Thompson at all. Who? They all said, looking at Tom like he was a silly man for asking. There's never been a Thompson on this street. Tom's heart sank. How could this be? He was sure Mr. Thompson lived next door. They had shared moments, waves, and even polite smiles. But now, it felt like he was the only one who remembered. Feeling confused and a bit scared, Tom hurried home, clutching his coat tightly around him. That night, Tom lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Why did nobody remember Mr. Thompson? Was he losing his mind? As he rolled over to sleep, he thought he heard a noise coming from next door. It sounded like a faint whisper, barely audible. Closing his eyes, he tried to ignore it, but the sound grew louder. It was as if someone was calling him, beckoning him to come closer. Finally, unable to resist, Tom threw on a sweatshirt and stepped outside. The air felt cold and heavy as he walked to Mr. Thompson's door. He hesitated, his heart pounding. What if he opened the door and found Mr. Thompson standing there, looking lost? But as he reached the door and knocked, it creaked open by itself. Tom felt a chill run down his spine. The inside of the house was dark and quiet, just like it appeared from the outside. "Mr. Thompson?" Tom called softly, stepping inside. The floor creaked under his feet, echoing in the silence. He felt like he was stepping into a ghost story. The walls were bare, with no pictures or decorations, as if the house had been stripped of all its memories. "Hello," he said again, his voice trembling. Just then he heard it again, the whisper. It was louder now, like someone was right behind him. He turned around quickly, but there was no one there. The only thing he saw was a dark hallway that seemed to stretch on forever. "Tom, you shouldn't have come here." The voice echoed off the damp stone walls, each word a chilling reminder of the darkness surrounding them. Tom felt a cold wave wash over him, making the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He turned quickly, trying to catch a glimpse of his neighbor, but all he saw was the empty air thick with shadows. "Mr. Thompson, where are you?" he stammered, his voice trembling. A sudden chill settled deeper in the basement, wrapping around Tom like a vice. The flicker of his phone light danced nervously, illuminating corners filled with dread. Suddenly, Tom felt a shift in the air, and a low growl reverberated from somewhere deep in the shadows. He pressed on, moving toward the sound, heart hammering in his chest. As he crossed the threshold into a darker section of the room, the temperature dropped further, biting at his skin. Muffled whispers filled the air, swirling around him like a swarm of lost souls. They seemed frantic, desperate, urging him to leave. "Tom," the voice floated again, now sounding closer. "You have to go." It carried an urgency, a warning so deep it sent a shiver down his spine. His breath quickened. "Are you okay? Where are you?" Panic surged in him as he fought against the suffocating darkness. Shadows twisted and moved along the walls, whispering secrets of regret and sorrow, and he felt an overwhelming sorrow descend upon him. As he strained to hear, the whispers morphed into a collective chant, a rhythmic pulse that echoed off the stone walls. "Help us! Help us!" they cried, an anguished wail that scratched at his heart. The oppressive feeling of being watched crept in on him. He wasn't alone in this darkness. Shapes began to materialize, flickering in and out of his line of sight, their forms twisted and contorted. Faces filled with anguish, eyes wide with unearthly terror. "Stop!" Tom shouted, but no one listened. They floated closer, reaching toward him with bony fingers, their mouths moving in a silent scream. He stumbled back, his mind racing with horror. How many souls were trapped here? He felt the fear claw at his chest, suffocating him. "Tom!" The voice of Mr. Thompson resonated again, more insistent this time. "You have to get out!" The shadow of his neighbor emerged from the darkness, the desperation evident on his face. "It's not safe. Find the key and leave." "Key? What key?" Tom blurted, panicking as shadows lunged toward him, dark tendrils hungry for his warmth. The weight of the trapped souls thrummed around him, a cacophony of pain and despair. On the table, Mr. Thompson pointed desperately as he started to fade in and out of existence, his figure flickering like a broken television screen. "You need to hurry." Tom turned in a frenzy, lunging towards the table in the center of the room, hands shaking. There it was, the small box, its surface covered in dust and strange markings. He searched it desperately, heart racing as whispers surged louder, drowning out his thoughts. The air felt thick, closing in, squeezing every ounce of courage from him. Trying to force his fingers to work, he fumbled with the tiny locks. The whispers transformed into a deafening roar. "Help us," they urged, merging into an unholy shriek that reverberated through his bones. He looked back at the shadows, writhing as they closed in, fear pounding in his ears. Just as the lock clicked open, a blinding light flared from within the box. Tom shielded his eyes, reeling as the shadows recoiled from the radiant glow. He reached inside, fingers trembling as they grasped the small, ornate key shimmering with an otherworldly energy. The moment it touched his skin, a wave of understanding flooded through him. The key wasn't just to a door. It was a beacon of hope for the trapped soul's yearning for liberation. "Tom, hurry!" Mr. Thompson cried out urgently, his form flickering dangerously. But before Tom could respond, the room shuddered violently. The shadows shrieked in fury, swirling around him like a storm. "Get out!" he yelled back, the newfound determination fueling his steps as he dashed toward the staircase leading back to the surface. The key felt hot in his hand, pulsing like a heartbeat as the darkness fought to hold him back, tendrils wrapping around his legs, pulling at him. Tom stumbled, nearly losing his footing against the onslaught of shadows. He could feel their cold touch against his skin, whispering horror in his ear, trying to lure him into despair. "You're one of us now," they taunted softly. "You'll never leave." "No," he bellowed, ripping himself free, tearing through the dark haze. The undeniable call of the surface urged him forward, a lifeline in the suffocating dread. With every ounce of strength, he pressed on until he reached the stairs, the light from the top shining like salvation. As he climbed, the shadows howled in rage, their wails echoing through the narrow confines of the basement. He could feel their despair clawing at his mind, but he couldn't stop now. Not when he had the key. Bursting through the door, Tom stumbled into the fresh air of the night, gasping as he let the light wash over him. But the weight of what he had seen was still heavy on his heart. He took a moment to catch his breath, glancing back at the house, the whispers still swirling around him, begging for release. "Mr. Thompson," he called out into the night, fear and resolve battling in his chest. If he had the key, he had to use it. "I'll save you." Determined, he rushed back toward the house, feeling the shadows still lingering. But this time, he held the key to combat them. The energy thrumming in his hand felt warm and alive, a direct link to the realities that lay intertwined. Tom descended once more into the basement, the air heavy with anticipation. "I will free you," he thought fiercely, eyes scanning the shadows that clawed at him. He could feel their despair, but this time the key of light warmed his heart. "Help us," the whispers echoed softly, but there was something different now in their tone, a flicker of hope. With that, he took a deep breath, steeling himself for the unknown that lay ahead, ready to uncover the mystery of the other side. The shadows may have receded, but he felt the thrill of discovery calling him into the depths of the night, echoing with promises of truth waiting to be unearthed. He stepped cautiously into the light emitted from the table, the warmth washing over him like a long-lost friend. As he entered, the air shifted, swirling around him with an electric hum. The basement began to fade, melting away like a mirage, and the world around him transformed into something surreal. Tom found himself standing at the edge of a vast forest blanketed in fog. The trees towered overhead, skeletal branches reaching out like hands desperate for something or someone. The moon hung low and heavy in the sky, casting eerie shadows that danced across the ground. An unsettling silence enveloped the trees, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves, whispering secrets he could not understand. "Where am I?" he muttered, instinctively taking a step back. The ground beneath his feet felt alive, pulsating with a heartbeat that mirrored his own. He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder, but the doorway, the light he had entered through, had vanished, leaving him alone in this foreboding realm. As he moved deeper into the woods, the atmosphere thickened, every step more difficult than the last. The shadows clung to him like a shroud, and he could feel eyes watching, lurking just beyond the reach of the moonlight. Dark shapes flitted just out of sight, beckoning him further into their domain. He felt the chill of being hunted, but there was no turning back now. Faint whispers floated on the breeze, teasing him with fragments of words. Find him, save us. They felt familiar, like echoes of the suffering souls he had just encountered. The chill crept down his spine, an icy finger tracing a line of fear. A sense of urgency propelled him forward, compelling him to follow the whispers. Suddenly, the ground gave way to a clearing, and he stumbled into an opening lit by an ethereal glow. At its center, an ancient stone monument stood, covered in runes that glimmered in the darkness. It pulsed with an inner light, almost alive, as if it were a gateway to another world. The air around it crackled with energy, drawing him closer. As he approached, the whispers intensified, merging into a cacophony of voices filled with pain and desperation. Help us, help him. The voices swirled around him, piercing through the silence and crashing over him like a wave. He felt their anguish seep into his soul, and he shuddered, struggling against its weight. Who do you want me to save? He shouted, his voice barely rising above the haunting symphony surrounding him. Is it Mr. Thompson? Where is he? In response, the air shimmered, distorting like a mirage, and suddenly, figures emerged from the depths of the fog, silhouettes of those he had encountered in the basement. They hovered near the stone, their forms mostly shadow, but flickering with brief glimpses of their true selves. Tom felt his resolve waver. Each face wore the markings of sorrow, their eyes reflecting a desperation that tugged at his heart. Tom's breath hitched as one of them, a young woman, stepped forward, her expression a mix of longing and fear. Please, she whispered, her voice breaking. You have to find him. He is trapped within the shadows. He's our only hope. Who do you mean? His heart raced, feeling the dread seep into every fiber of his being. This place was alive with echoes of despair, and each passing moment felt like an hour. The Keeper, another voice chimed in, this one deeper, more resonant. He knows the way to break the curse, to free all of us. If you can find him, we can be saved. Before Tom could respond, the shadows behind the figures rippled ominously. A low growl resonated in the air, a deep, rumbling presence that sent a wave of terror crashing over him. From the darkness emerged a creature, its form a twisted blend of human and shadow. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, piercing through the gloom, locking onto Tom with a relentless hunger. Leave this place, it growled, and the temperature dropped. The air thickened with a palpable menace, a warning that tore through the silence. The spirits around him recoiled, their voices fading into terrified whispers. Tom stood frozen, his instincts screaming at him to run, but something deep within pushed against the fear. He had come this far. The key in his pocket felt heavy, urging him to act. I won't leave, he declared, gathering his courage as he stepped forward. I will find the Keeper. The creature's growl grew louder, vibrating in Tom's bones, but with each step he took, the frantic energy of the spirits surged behind him, a wave of purpose that filled the clearing. You cannot save what is lost, it roared, lunging toward him with an unnatural speed. Tom's heart raced as he reached for the key in his pocket, holding it up as if it were a shield. The air crackled with energy, and the rune-inscribed monument began to glow brighter, responding to his defiance. With a fierce determination, he called out, If I am to find the Keeper, then you must let me pass. The creature hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing its face, but the shadows around it writhed and contorted with anger. Foolish boy, you don't know the power you tamper with. Shadows have a way of claiming all who defy them. I won't give up, Tom asserted, arms trembling as he felt the weight of his resolve. The monument pulsed again, and the air thickened with anticipation. I have the key. I will free him, and all of you. The shadows recoiled momentarily, the creature's growl shifting to a snarl of frustration. You tread a dangerous path. It will consume you. But Tom stood his ground, feeling the spirits rallying behind him, their combined strength filling him with a fierce light. He knew that somewhere in this dark maze, he could find the Keeper and secure freedom for the souls trapped within this nightmarish realm. As he prepared to take another step forward, The very air around him began to ripple and shimmer, blurring the edges of reality. There was something waiting for him beyond the fog, something that would either be his salvation or his doom. Gathering all the bravery he could muster, he launched into the fog, feeling the weight of shadows tugging at him, but refusing to let them claim him. "Show me the way," Tom yelled as he plunged into the depths of the unknown, his heart pounding with the rhythm of destiny. Each step felt heavier as the fog thickened, the sounds around him warping into haunting echoes and distant wails that clung to his mind. Shadows whispered secrets he couldn't grasp, fear threading its way back into his resolve. Yet, with each passing moment, he felt the flicker of hope. He would not let fear win. He would find the keeper and uncover the truth hidden in this sinister world. All he needed was to trust the light within him and follow the beckoning tendrils of destiny, leading him deeper into the dark heart of the forest. As Tom plunged forward, the fog thickened around him like a suffocating blanket. He could barely see a foot in front of him, each step swallowed by the consuming grayness. The whispers grew louder, swirling around him like a frenzied storm of lost souls. Their voices overlapped, a cacophony of despair and confusion. "Help us! Help trapped!" The words slithered into his ears, chilling him to the bone. Shadows flickered in his peripheral vision, darting just out of sight, and he could feel their hungry gaze burning into his back. With each step, the temperature dropped, an icy grip wrapping itself around his chest, squeezing tighter with every passing moment. Tom shivered, teeth chattering as he pressed on. He felt as if the very essence of dread was seeping into his bones, stealing his warmth. The sounds of the forest faded, replaced by an unsettling quiet that amplified his heartbeat. Suddenly, a shrill scream echoed through the trees, cutting through the silence like a knife. It was a sound filled with terror, sharp and piercing. Tom stumbled, adrenaline shooting through him as he spun around, trying to locate the source, but the fog concealed everything. The scream faded, replaced by a low, sorrowful wail that held an echo of anguish. "Tom," a voice drifted on the breeze. It was soft and yet filled with a haunting call, resonating deep within his core. He felt compelled to answer, an almost magnetic pull urging him to follow. "Is someone there?" he called out, his voice uncertain, trembling as he ventured forward. The fog parted slightly, revealing fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures, their forms shifting and flickering like candle flames. They reached out toward him, fingers wavering in the dim light, their faces obscured by the thick mist, but their expressions filled with longing. "Help us find the keeper," they whispered in unison, their voices a dissonant harmony that sent chills racing down his spine. Tom hesitated, fear battling over his instincts, but within him burned a faint light of determination. "I will find him," he promised, hoping his words could cut through the suffocating gloom. "Just show me the way." The shadows stirred, swirling around him in a rush as if they were alive, beckoning him further into the depths of darkness. The air felt dense and heavy, like stepping through molasses, dragging him deeper into this nightmare. He felt the oppressive weight of despair surrounding him, pressing in from all sides, trying to grip him in its cold, black fingers. He walked on, heart pounding, each footfall echoing in the silence, surrounded by whispers that urged him forward. Suddenly, he stumbled over a root hidden beneath a thick layer of fog, crashing to the ground. The murk swallowed him up, his breath hitching as he struggled to rise. When he regained his footing, he found himself in a small clearing, and what he saw made his stomach drop. Scattered about were remnants of broken branches and scattered stones, but what caught his attention were the markings carved into the earth. Symbols twisted and writhed beneath the mist like a dark language begging to be deciphered. As he stepped closer, the symbols glimmered ominously, flickering with an unholy light as if infused with pain. Tom squinted, trying to make sense of the chaos, but a flicker of movement caught his eye. Shadows shifted against the tree line, merging, bending, and rising into an imposing figure. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs unnaturally elongated, and jerking with a disjointed motion. Its face was a black void, not a single feature breaking the surface, only a gaping maw that opened wider and wider like a rift into the abyss. "Who dares disturb the keeper's dominion?" it hissed, the sound sliding through the air like ice. The voice slithered, both eerily calm and filled with a menacing undercurrent that drew closer with every word. Tom stepped back, panic surging, but he remembered the light that had carried him through the hardships before. He clutched the key tightly in his hand, its metallic surface warm against his palm. "I'm looking for the keeper," he said, forcing his voice to remain steady despite his trembling body. "I need to find him." The figure seemed to pause, a shuddering breath that felt like a gust of cold wind surrounding him. "The keeper cannot be found by mere mortals," it hissed, each word laden with mockery. Shadows writhed at its feet, thick tendrils reaching out as if eager to ensnare him. "I'm not leaving without him," Tom declared, rallying his courage. The spirits flickered around him, a chorus of muted pleas, their glowing forms shifting with despair. With a shriek that tore through the night, the figure lunged, its elongated arms stretching toward him in a blur of darkness. Tom's heart raced, instinct kicking in as he swung the key like a weapon, a desperate act of defiance against the encroaching doom. The air shimmered around the key, a glimmer of light appearing where it met the shadows. As the key connected, a shockwave rippled through the clearing, splintering the shadows. The figure howled in fury, its form collapsing in on itself, dispersing like smoke in the wind. The ground beneath him shook, the symbols glowing brighter in response to the clash. Tom gasped for air, feeling the weight of the darkness lift ever so slightly, a newfound clarity illuminating the path ahead. The whispers transformed into a powerful roar, urging him forward. "Find the keeper!" With determination surging through him, he pressed deeper into the fog, the remnants of shadows twisting around him, but now with a sense of urgency fueling his steps. Each heartbeat synced with the pulsing energy of the forest, leading him ever closer to uncovering the truth that lay beyond the veil of darkness. Suddenly, he felt a shift in the air, an unmistakable crackle of energy leading him to a narrow path obscured by dense foliage. As he pushed through the branches, they snapped back in place, blocking out the light behind him. A chill raced through him, but there was no turning back now. Ahead, he could see a faint glow. A glimmer of hope shone through the shadows, beckoning him forward. Each step carried him closer to the keeper, the heart of the mystery, leading him to the resolution he had desperately sought. But as he drew nearer, the whispers increased, ominous warnings of what awaited him. "Do not trust the light," they hissed. "The keeper holds the darkness within." Tom's breath caught in his throat. The notion settled like a stone in his gut, reminding him that the shadows were never far behind. But with every ounce of his being, he knew he had to confront the keeper, even if it meant facing the darkest parts of himself and the world around him. He took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders as he emerged into yet another clearing. Before him stood a figure, cloaked in darkness, an aura of power surrounding it. The form radiated a light that seemed both inviting and sinister, pulling at him like a whispered promise. "Welcome, Seeker," the keeper's voice rolled over him, smooth and chilling. "You have come far, but do you truly understand what you seek?" Tom's heart raced, the weight of the shadows pressing against him once more. In that moment, he understood. The journey had only just begun, and secrets long buried awaited unveiling. All he had to do was find the courage to confront the darkness that lay ahead. "Do you wish to know the truth?" the keeper asked, its voice a soft, unsettling melody that wrapped around him like fog. Tom felt a shiver travel down his spine. Something about the way the words rolled off the keeper's tongue made the air grow heavier, thicker. He nodded, even as doubt crept into the back of his mind. "Very well," the keeper said, stepping closer, its form shifting and flickering in the pale light. It stretched a hand toward him, long fingers extending impossibly far, almost as if they were reaching for something hidden inside the shadows themselves. "But know this, Seeker. The truth can be a weight that shatters the soul. Tom swallowed hard, the idea of opening that door sending a jolt of fear through him. But how could he turn back now? The weight of lost souls depended on him. With a trembling voice, he replied, "I'm ready. Show me." The air thickened around them, swirling in a vortex of darkness. And suddenly, the world shifted. The colors drained from the trees, the earth beneath them transforming into a harsh landscape of blackened branches and ashen ground. The fog curled tighter, shutting everything else away until it was just him and the keeper, standing in what felt like a twisted nightmare. Before him, the keeper raised its hand gently, and the shadows coalesced into images that flickered like old film. First, it showed a village, once vibrant and filled with laughter. People danced around fires, joy radiating from their faces. Tom felt a tug of warmth in his heart, a desire to be part of that light. But as the keeper's face darkened, the image morphed. The joyous laughter turned into screams, and the flames twisted, consuming everything in their path. The villagers cried out in terror, faces contorted in anguish as they were pulled into the darkness. Tom staggered back, nausea gripping his stomach as he watched the horrifying transformation. What were these people? What had they done to deserve such a fate? Tom wanted to scream, to deny what his eyes were seeing, but the keeper's hold on him was strong. This is what happens when the light is taken for granted. It hissed, a cruel smile flickering across its void-like face. When they closed their eyes to the shadows creeping upon them, the scene shifted again, showing mourning and despair in the aftermath. A graveyard filled with countless graves, the soil still fresh. Flickering lights hovered above the headstones, spirits caught in a cycle of sorrow, reaching out for something they would never grasp. He recognized some of their faces from the twisted images before. Suddenly, one of the spirits broke free, a gaunt figure soaring toward him. It was ethereal, a scream tearing from its lips, an echo of desperate loss. "Help us! Help!" it cried, its eyes wide with terror and grief, reaching for Tom with trembling hands. Tom felt a surge of energy rush through him, a deep-seated compassion stirring within as he stepped forward. "I can help! Just tell me what to do!" he shouted. But the keeper's laughter cut through his plea, dark and hollow. "They are lost to the shadows, just like you," it said, voice dripping with malice. "To usher them back would unravel the delicate threads of this world. You must choose, seeker, the light of your heart or the shadows of your soul." Tom's breath quickened, panic clawing at his chest. He looked back at the spirit, desperation etched across its face, an echo of torment that mirrored his own fear. What did it mean to choose between light and darkness? Wasn't he here to fight for the trapped souls? "I want to save them," he shouted defiantly, a flame of resolve igniting within him. He would not let souls perish if he could help it. Yet his voice trembled at the enormity of that promise. "Foolish boy," the keeper whispered, circling around him, the shadows writhing like snakes at its feet. "To want to save them means embracing that which you fear most. Are you ready to face the darkness lurking in your own heart?" With every word, the shadows shifted, and the air grew thick as a dark wind swirled around him, invading his mind. Images from his past flickered in the haze, memories he had buried deep, his fears, regrets, and moments of weakness that clawed at him. A youth laughing in a sunlit field. Then the dark shadow of a forgotten betrayal, a friend lost to anger, a loved one turned away. "No!" Tom cried, trying to push those memories back into the fog. But the keeper's grip tightened, forcing him to see everything he had hidden away. "Your heart is a battlefield, cruel and twisted," the keeper taunted, its form shifting like smoke around him. "You will suffer the consequences of your actions. The darkness will linger even in your light." But as he wrestled with the haunting images, Tom felt a spark of defiance. Yes, he had been afraid, and yes, he made mistakes. But he had also loved fiercely, stood up against injustice, and fought for what he believed in. The very reason he was here was proof of his strength against the tide of despair. "I won't let the darkness win," he replied, voice steady now, shining through the murk like a beacon. I refuse to be ruled by my past. The keeper hesitated, shadowy tendrils momentarily stilling. It seemed surprised, perhaps even curious. Then face what lies beyond the veil. It commanded, a hint of intrigue in its tone. Only then will you free those who are trapped. With each breath, Tom pushed through the suffocating weight of the dark wind, forcing himself back into the clearing where the shadows pulsed with uncertainty. He could feel the spirits around him, their energy mingling with his as they were summoned by the light within his heart. It ignited a fire against the cold despair, lighting the way forward. "What do you need from me?" he asked, determination flooding back into his veins. "Tell me how I can help them." The keeper's smile widened, revealing nothing but emptiness. "You must embrace the darkness and wield it," it whispered, shadows swirling into a coiling mass at its feet. "Harness the very essence of what they fear most." And perhaps a new vision materialized before him, one filled with swirling chaos. Tom could see the spirits struggling against the shadows, ensnared within an ever-tightening grip. Their faces, once filled with anguish, now mirrored his own determination. They needed him, motivated by their plight. Tom stepped forward, heart full of fierce intention. "I'll do whatever it takes," he shouted, voice rising above the din of whispers, the shadows clawing at his feet in encouragement. The keeper's laughter resonated in the air, both a promise and a threat. "Then step into the darkness, young seeker. Only then will you discover the power lying within you and the truth that time has twisted." As the keeper raised its hand, the shadows enveloped Tom, drawing him deeper into the haze. A dark portal yawned ahead, beckoning with the promise of revelation and ultimate confrontation. Tom steeled himself, plunging straight into the unknown, fueled by the hope of freedom for the souls trapped in the web of despair. In that moment of choice, he felt the weight lift, his heart ready to face whatever lay on the other side, even as the shadows whispered a chilling reminder. Not all journeys end in light. Tom plunged into the darkness, the world around him distorting as he fell, swirling visions wrapping around him like a shroud. He landed with a thud on damp, cold ground. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and he struggled to catch his breath, choking on the remnants of long-forgotten whispers. Faint, flickering lights were all that guided him, dancing at the edges of his vision. For a moment, he hesitated, scanning the surroundings. This place felt wrong. The trees loomed tall and twisted, their branches like gnarled fingers reaching toward a sky that was perpetually clouded over. The atmosphere was heavy, thick with an unsettling echo, as if voices from the past were trapped among the leaves. "Help me," a faint voice called from somewhere deeper within the gloom, each word dripping with despair. It was haunting, jagged, and it sent chills racing down Tom's spine. "Please don't leave me here." He felt a pull toward the voice, and though fear wrapped around him like a vice, he followed. Shadows danced at his feet, writhing like snakes eager to ensnare him. The deeper he stepped into this place, the more he could sense an undeniable presence lurking just beyond the shadows. Desperation clung to the air, and he could almost taste the sorrow that permeated the ground beneath him. As he plunged further into the depths, the trees began to thin, revealing a clearing that felt alive with sinister energy. Wisps of mist slithered around ancient stones half buried in the earth, their surfaces draped in slick green moss that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly heartbeat. The air was electric with urgency, and Tom could feel the Watcher's presence nearby, as if something unseen was observing him, waiting, biding its time. "Tom," the voice called out again, this time clearer but still chilling. You came to free me." Suddenly, the shadows around the clearing thickened, swirling into a vortex of darkness that formed a figure, a woman, pale and ethereal, her eyes wide with unearthly terror. She beckoned to him, but as he stepped closer, her features twisted in pain. "Please don't let it take you too," she whimpered, her voice a wretched whisper barely piercing the heavy darkness that surrounded them. It was then that he noticed the chains, shackles woven of shadow, lashed around her wrists and ankles, pulling her down into the earth as if the ground itself wanted to claim her. "No, I will not let it take you," Tom shouted, heart pounding fiercely against his ribcage. He lunged forward, reaching for her, but the moment his fingers brushed against her skin, a jolt of cold shot through him, as if lightning had struck him down. The shadows surged forward in response, their cries like voices echoing in a long-forgotten cavern, a cacophony of despair rising against the high canopy of twisted trees. "She is ours," they shrieked in unison, the darkness swirling threateningly around him, drawing nearer, suffocating. "You cannot save her. You cannot save any of them." Tom staggered back, feeling the pull of the darkness attempting to drag him under. The air was thickening around him, the shadows rising like a tidal wave, trying to drown out his will. He squeezed his eyes shut, focusing on the light he felt within, an ember burning against the encroaching dread. "Help them!" He heard another spirit cry out, voices mingling in a desperate plea that cut. The air around Tom crackled with energy, but the victory felt fleeting, like a whisper lost in the wind. He could sense that the darkness wasn't truly vanquished. It lingered just beyond the edge of the clearing, watching, waiting. He glanced around at the spirits, their faces now calm, yet overshadowed by an unsettling presence. The trees around them loomed like sentinels, their gnarled branches twisted into grotesque shapes. The ground beneath his feet seemed to pulsate, throbbing with a heartbeat that felt all too alive. With every breath he took, the scent of damp earth and decay filled his lungs, leaving a metallic taste on his tongue. "Where are we going now?" one spirit asked, their voice trembling slightly. Tom could feel the darkness pressing in, like a heavy fog that choked the very air. "We need to keep moving," he said, his voice steady. "If we linger here, the Keeper won't be far behind." With every step, shadows danced around them, flickering in and out of existence, creating an eerie sense of being followed. Whispering voices echoed among the trees, low and ominous, speaking words he couldn't quite understand, but he could feel their intent, palpable and threatening. "Stay close," he urged again, glancing over his shoulder as they moved deeper into the woods. Within the trees, the shadows coiled like serpents, ready to strike. He could almost hear the soft padding of footsteps trailing behind them, a sinister echo that matched the quickening of his heart. Suddenly, a chilling breeze swept through the clearing, a breeze that felt cold enough to freeze the very marrow in his bones. Leaves rustled violently, and a branch snapped nearby, sending a shiver down his spine. The silence that followed was deafening, as if the very spirit of the woods held its breath, waiting to see what would come next. "Tom!" another spirit exclaimed, their eyes wide as they caught a glimpse of movement among the trees. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, disembodied shapes skirting away just as quickly as they appeared. "Do you see that?" He did. The darkness was not just creeping around them. It was alive, morphing and shifting, weaving between the trees, almost playful in its stalking. The voices rose again, louder this time, clawing at his mind with each syllable. "You should have stayed in your place, little seeker. You cannot escape what you've awakened." Fear rippled through him, a cold knot settling in his stomach. The spirits clung to each other, their fear palpable as they huddled closer, but it only served to draw the shadow's attention. "Keep moving," he urged, and they picked up the pace, hearts pounding like drums in the night. But with each hurried step, the laughter grew louder, a mocking chorus echoing through the thick underbrush, as if the very dark was relishing their fear and panic. Branches reached out, clawing at them like hands, and the path beneath their feet twisted unexpectedly. It felt as though the forest itself conspired against them, creating an ever-changing maze of darkness. Shadows slipped between the trees, coiling tighter around them, and the atmosphere thickened, becoming oppressive as if the weight of 1,000 lost souls bore down on their shoulders. As they pressed onward, Tom caught sight of a clearing up ahead, bathed in pale moonlight. Relief flooded his senses, but as they neared, An unsettling sight met their eyes. Bones littered the ground, twisted and gnawed upon, remnants of those who had ventured here before them, trapped and forgotten. "Tom, we shouldn't go there," one whispered, dread spilling into their voice. The moonlight cast ghostly shapes across the remains, telling tales of despair and hopelessness, a fucking warning that reverberated through the night. "Maybe we can find a way out through there," Tom suggested, though uncertainty gnawed at him. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end as shadows swirled around the clearing, drawing nearer. Then, from the depths of the darkness, figures began to emerge, ghastly forms that slithered from the edges of the forest, their faces twisted in agony as they beckoned. The spirits gasped, recoiling as they recognized the lost souls who had succumbed to the Keeper's dark grasp. Their eyes were void, milky and hollow, glimmering with an unholy hunger. "What do you seek?" one of the apparitions rasped, its voice a whispered breeze that sent a chill through Tom's spine. It reached out, fingers long and skeletal, almost brushing against his cheek with a cold that felt sharper than ice. "Do you wish to join us? To be a part of this eternal nightmare?" Tom could feel the darkness pressing closer, wanting to envelop him, to drain him of hope. He stepped back instinctively, clutching the spirit's arm beside him. "No, we're not here for that," he shouted, fighting against the tide of despair that threatened to drown them. The spirit screamed, the sound tearing through the night as the apparitions lunged, their arms extended, searching for warmth, for life to consume. "You'll never escape," they cried in unison, voices merging into a cacophony of chaos. Shadows twisted around Tom and the spirits, forming a barrier, a web designed to trap and ensnare. "Run!" Tom yelled, and he bolted for the edge of the clearing, the others following suit, their breath coming in frantic gasps. Just behind them, the shadows flared with rage, their inky tendrils reaching out to snatch at their heels, desperate to pull them back into the embrace of doom. As they reached the threshold of the clearing, a sudden force slammed into him from behind. Tom stumbled, nearly losing his footing as he felt an icy grip clutch at his shoulder. Panic surged within him, survival instinct driving him forward. "Don't look back," the spirit next to him cried, but curiosity lingered, overwhelming. He dared a flickering glance back and was met with those soulless eyes, the dead gazes of countless lost souls crowding the edge of the clearing, their mouths twisted in silent screams. The Keeper's shadow loomed larger behind them, pulsing with an energy that sent ripples of dread trailing down his spine. They pushed onward into the darkness that awaited, breaking through the other side into a network of twisted branches and thorny brambles. The path before them seemed to writhe like a living creature, and the noises from behind faded into echoes, but the fear remained, carving deep into his heart. "Where do we go now?" One spirit huffed, their voice shaking. Tom swallowed hard, glancing back one last time. The clearing was now shrouded, the spirit swallowed by the thick fog of the trees. Yet he felt the presence of the Keeper creeping, lurking within the shadows. "We have to find a safe place to regroup, something solid, or else..." His words trailed off as a chilling howl resonated through the woods, a deep, gut-wrenching sound that seemed to come from every direction. The ground trembled beneath them, and Tom could feel the pull of the darkness growing stronger, a living entity eager to reclaim its lost prey. He led them deeper into the forest, the darkness playing tricks on his mind. Each rustle of leaves, each snap of a branch felt like whispers, taunting him. "You can't escape," they seemed to hiss. He gripped his spirit's hand tighter, but could feel their resolve wavering, the weight of despair creeping upon them like a slow cloud rolling in before a storm. "Keep your focus," Tom urged, his heart pounding furiously as they pressed further into the seemingly endless abyss. The shadows flickered dangerously close, reaching, eager to snatch anyone who faltered. If they didn't find refuge soon, he feared the spirit's hope might be extinguished alongside his own. He could sense the Keeper drawing nearer. The pressure surrounded them, tightening like a noose, whispering promises of surrender and despair. The trees seemed to close in, forming a dark tunnel that narrowed with every step. Then, just as hope began to flicker, a glimmer caught his eye, an ancient archway entwined with moss and vines, barely visible among the overgrowth. "There!" he shouted, pointing to the arch that beckoned like a distant promise, something solid amidst the chaos. As they rushed toward it, shadows surged behind them, unfurling like a wave born from an unseen storm, wielding darkness that hunger betrayed. The keeper's form was becoming clearer now, its shadow stretching impossibly tall, a figure beyond the realm of understanding, merging with the forest itself. "Go!" Tom urged, pushing the spirits ahead, his body vibrating with fear and determination. The archway loomed, wide and dark, filled with an unsettling light that promised safety but also uncertainty. With one final surge of adrenaline, he dove through the arch, the spirits tumbling in behind him just as the darkness burst into the clearing behind, clawing at the void where they had been moments before. They landed in a swirl of leaves and mist, tumbling onto a soft, grassy floor. He rolled onto his back, gasping for breath, heart hammering as the arch loomed above him, a protective threshold standing between them and the encroaching nightmare. But as he glanced around, unease settled in his gut. The air here was thick, charged with something ancient and malevolent. Shadows stretched long, twisting around them, and despite having escaped the immediate threat, Tom felt a new presence wash over them. Soft whispers filled the air around him, blurry shapes forming in the corners of his vision, darting just out of sight, hinting at the unseen horrors that lay beyond the veil of their sanctuary. "What is this place?" one spirit murmured, glancing around in fear. Tom stood up slowly, scanning the area, but all he could make out were trees that looked like twisted frames from a long-lost memory. "I don't know," he admitted, dread spidering through his thoughts. "But I think it isn't safe here either." As he stepped forward, he felt a chill running down his spine, a sense of being watched from every angle. Shadows danced across the ground, whispering his name, thick with promise and threats intertwined. Each step forward echoed with a heaviness that felt almost tangible, like the weight of history pressing down on him. Remnants of countless souls searching, yearning, and failing. The winds picked up around them, carrying ghostly sighs, laughter that turned to sobs, urging them to leave or to stay. The spirits shifted nervously, confusion clouding their eyes as the shadows parted just enough to reveal the fleeting outlines of figures. "Tom," another spirit whispered, "I think we're not alone." They turned, and in the space behind the archway, figures emerged. Shadows took on form there, bodies blurred, faces half-formed, but their intentions seeped through like poison. "You should not have trespassed," they warned, their voices a chilling echo that reverberated through the air and gripped Tom's heart. They watched with hollow eyes, thin fingers curling as they reached out, beckoning him closer. "Join us in the endless night. You can't resist the pull of darkness." Tom's heart raced, an instinct screamed for him to back away, but he stood firm, feeling the warmth pulse against the biting cold that surrounded them. "No," he shouted, his voice emerging stronger than the whispers weighing heavy in the gloom. "I won't succumb to you." But even as he spoke, doubts crept in, whispering insidiously in his mind. It was all too easy to give in, to lose oneself in shadows that promise comfort. The keeper's voice rang out clearly in his ear, a haunting melody that seemed to sway the spirits around him. "You are merely prolonging the inevitable, seeker. You belong to the darkness." He shook off the feeling, pushing forward, drawing the spirits into a tighter circle as he searched for a way through. "We've come too far to turn back now," he declared, heart racing like a drum against the encroaching silence. But the shadows closed in slowly, tightening their grip, fingers wrapping around ankles and wrists, dragging and tugging, whispering without words but conveying a truth that twisted in his gut. Perhaps they were right. Darkness felt familiar, seductive. "Tom, we can find a way to fight it," one of the spirits said, though there was doubt in their tone now, the spark of hope dimming as uncertainty washed over the crowd gathered. "No, don't let it in," he roared, pushing them forward toward a small path that twisted away from the shadows, feeling the darkness claw at the hem of his clothes. Yet the density of the air thickened, swarming with shadows that yanked at his resolve, murmuring secrets of despair. He sprinted ahead, veering down the path, desperately urging the spirits with him. "Follow me. Do not look back." And as they took off into the gloom, the hidden truths of their own fear clawed at their heels, shadows rushing to catch up, fingers brushing against skin, breath stealing away in the chill of the night. As they ran, the path twisted and wound beneath a canopy of ancient trees. Glimpses of flickering light peeked between the branches above, beckoning them forward, a distant memory of hope tantalizingly close. But every moment felt stolen, every breath swimming against a tide, threatening to erase them completely. "Keep going," Tom yelled as shadows lunged, narrowing the distance and edging closer, their whispers now a feral growl that rattled his bones. "We can make it." But the shadows were relentless, weaving through the underbrush like smoke, dark tendrils creeping toward them as they raced forward. Tom could feel the air around him crackle with dread, each rustling leaf a reminder of how close they were to the abyss, to being consumed by the very darkness they were fleeing. "Listen," he gasped, trying to drown out the cacophony of whispers clawing at the edge of his mind. "We have to stick together." But the spirits began to lag, their forms ethereal and flickering like candle flames threatened by a strong wind. Behind them, the air thickened, palpable with a malevolence that curled around like a serpent ready to strike. Tom cast a glance over his shoulder, heart slamming in his chest as he spotted the keeper emerging from the dark, its silhouette looming larger than ever, a smirk stretching across its shadowy face, glimmering teeth that reflected the moonlight with an ominous sheen. With each footfall, the ground trembled beneath him, as if it too were terrified of what was to come. "Run!" he screamed again, but there was a tremor in his voice now, a shake of fear that he couldn't suppress. The path ahead twisted and turned, narrowing into a funnel of creeping shadows, each corner armored with the whispers and wails of souls lost to the night. Desperation surged through him as he sprinted faster, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The trees closed in, gnarled and twisted, their branches stretching forward like skeletal hands. Their leaves rustled with chittering voices, taunting and beckoning him to give in. "Let us take you home, Tom," they hummed, a chilling melody woven with malicious intent. "You'll never escape this world. Join us," he pressed on, fighting the dark temptation that threatened to entwine itself around his heart. The spirits beside him hovered close, some flickering like dying stars, others flickering with a dimming light, their faces twisted in fear as they struggled against the gathering shadows, each spirit seemingly grappling with their own thoughts of surrender, drawn to the lies seductively whispered by the apparitions that flanked them. "Stay strong," he called out, desperation filling his voice. But the shadows seemed to coil tighter, reaching with deft fingers, wrapping around the spirits and pulling them in like a net tightening under the weight of a heavy catch. "Don't let them take you. Fight, fight." In the corner of his eye, he saw one spirit give in, illuminated in a ghostly glow as they were ensnared, fingertips stretching outwards as they faded into the darkness, their cries muffled as the shadows claimed another. A sickening realization washed over Tom. This wasn't just about survival. The darkness sought to feed, to consume every flicker of light, extinguishing hope until all that remained was a vast emptiness. As he ran, the trees began to shift, their bark seeming to warp and bend, faces emerging in grotesque expressions of anguish. They grimaced down at him, their mouths opening wide in silent screams, begging for release. The very ground felt alive, alive with despair and the whispers of ancient agony, urging him to succumb, to relent. "Join us, stay forever." Tom stumbled, but forced himself to push through the surge of terror, heart slamming in his chest. He could feel the weight of their gaze, 1,000 eyes lurking in the dark recesses, watching, calculating. Each heartbeat echoed in the silence, thudding louder as they haunted him, reminding him of the fragility of his existence. Just when he thought he could escape the darkness, a sharp crack echoed through the trees as a branch broke underfoot. Tom didn't look back. He couldn't afford to lose precious seconds. The keeper's shadow loomed just out of reach, an oppressive weight that pressed against his shoulders, whispering promises of power that would come at a terrible cost. His vision bounced erratically, adrenaline coursing through him as a sickly yellow light flickered ahead, filtering through the labyrinth of branches. It called to him like a distant lighthouse, but every step felt like he was walking deeper into a nightmare. Shadows twisted around him, whispering lies of comfort and belonging, a dark lullaby that droned on, trying to drown out his will. A howl split the air, a sound so primal that it shook him to his core. It was cold and sharp, slicing through the fog of despair that threatened to swallow him whole. The shadows seethed, hissing as a rush of air like a lion's growl filled the space, wrapping itself around him like a shroud. Every fiber of his being screamed for him to flee, yet his feet felt rooted to the ground, as if the very darkness was trying to seduce him into stillness. "Tom!" A spirit cried out in fear, tremors lacing their voice. "We can't fight it any longer." "No!" he roared back, forcing himself to move, to defy the shadows encroaching upon him. The light drew closer with every push of his legs, but it felt like running through molasses, heavy and slow, as the whispers grew louder, urging him to let go. "We have to keep going. Do you hear me?" But as they dashed into the clearing bathed in murky light, it became apparent that this was not the refuge he had hoped for. The ground opened up into a gaping maw of darkness, a vast chasm that pulsed like a heartbeat. The light that flickered was distorted, refracting off twisted shapes that circled the pit. His heart raced as he saw lost spirits hovering just above the abyss, flickering between hope and despair, caught in the limbo of existence. "Help us," they pleaded, fragility woven into their voices. "Don't let it take you too." Tom's breath hitched in his throat as he approached the edge, staring into the depths. Tendrils of dark mist swirled up like fingers, grasping and pulling at him, trying to drag him down with the spirits that drifted helplessly above. He could hear the hopelessness in their cries, feel the weight of despair in the air, and it chilled him to the bone. "Stay back," he shouted, waving the spirits away, his own fear clawing at his mind as he fought against the urge to leap into the abyss, to escape the terror that lay behind. But even as he cried out, the keeper's shadow settled in behind him, an ominous presence that loomed larger now, casting an impossibly dark pall over his heart. "Don't fight it," the keeper whispered, a smoky voice that curled around him like a serpentine embrace. "Join them. The shadows will welcome you. You will never feel pain again." "Stop!" Tom shouted defiantly, shaking his head fiercely as despair tugged at him, wanting to draw him into the comforting darkness. He could feel the spirits pressing closer, urging him to join, but he knew he had to resist, even as the keeper's laughter echoed hauntingly in his ears. He took a step back, feeling the ground shift beneath him, fragile and unstable. "We have to find a way out," he yelled, desperation gripping him as he surveyed the surrounding trees for any sign of escape while the shadows slithered, thrumming with dark energy, eager to claim their next victim. With his heart pounding, Tom turned back to the spirits, willing them to see the truth. "Look," he shouted, pointing back the way they had come. "We're strong together. We can fight this." But the pull of the abyss was insidious, tempting with visions of easy escape, the sweet promise of peace stealing over the group like a thick fog. "What if this is the end?" one spirit asked, their voice trembling, uncertainty washing over their features. "What if it's too late? Then let's make it count," Tom shouted, the adrenaline surging again as the shadows roared, a cacophony of loss ringing in his ears. "We can do this! Together!" The air electric with anxiety, he turned his back to the chasm, taking a step away from the beckoning void, urging the spirits toward him. He could feel the keeper's attention bore into him like a dagger, the figment thrumming in the darkness with a hunger that felt almost tangible. But behind him, the path of hope shimmered, just within reach, If only they could grasp it before the shadows snuffed out all light. Then, with a quick glance back, he noticed a shimmering thread strung through the clearing, weaving between the trees like a silken web. "We can use that," he cried, realizing it might be their only chance to escape the clutches of the keeper. The spirits paused, glancing at one another, before slowly making their way toward the luminous string. Even in this dark world, something glimmered, a promise, a glint of hope. With renewed resolve, Tom grabbed hold and pulled, feeling the energy surge through him. "Stay close," he called, encouraging each spirit to find their own grip on the thread, and together they turned away from the shadow-cloaked abyss. Hand in hand, driven by will, they dashed toward the mysterious light, feeling the shadows pull at their heels with a desperate ferocity, wanting nothing more than to drag them back into the darkness. As they moved, he felt the keeper's rage roaring louder, a furious wind whipping around them like a tempest as the void seemed to churn violently, shadows twisting, angry and hungry. But Tom held fast, refusing to let go, the light ahead beckoning more fiercely, promising refuge against the encroaching dread. They twisted through the trees, and amidst the chaos, glimmers of optimism ignited in his heart. Despite the darkness surrounding him, against the shadows clawing at his form, each spirit following felt stronger, determined to not let the past define them. "Don't stop now," Tom urged as he neared the edge of the clearing, watching the way bend and flow toward that luminous thread, igniting courage in their souls. Laughter echoed in the distance surrounding them, twisted and malevolent. Fear cut deep as he heard it, familiar yet twisted, but he couldn't let it rule them. "Keep moving," he shouted, fortifying his grip, praying the unseen force would take them further from the abyss. Just ahead, he noticed a break in the trees, a hint of light flickering like starlight peeking through thick fog. The keeper's howling fury roared behind them, each step taking them further from the path of despair. And with every ounce of energy left in them, they surged toward the light as it washed over them, an ethereal glow that enveloped their forms. The shadows clamored, an army of darkness screaming their defeat behind them, but it felt like a lifetime of pain receding, grasping blindly at the vanishing flicker their light had cast. Together, they hurled into an expanse of shimmering brilliance, a world that pulsed with warmth, embracing their weary souls and banishing the darkness behind them. Tom felt an unnameable force surge through him as they crossed the threshold. It wasn't just light. It was hope, defiance against the odds, a promise that they could still be free and forge ahead. The keeper's presence began to fade, the howling dimming into a whisper, shadows retreating into the night. But the struggle was far from over. At the edge of this newfound space, shadows lingered, impatience laced within their tendrils, waiting to reclaim what was lost. While they had found a moment of respite, time pressed on, and Tom knew they could never allow themselves to grow complacent, for a deeper fight awaited just beyond the warmth surrounding them. As the shadows retreated, they glanced back, the keeper's presence looming still, a dark silhouette etched against the world they had fought to reclaim, constantly watching, waiting for a moment of weakness. Tom took a breath, feeling the weight of freedom in the space around him, but shadows still lurked on the edges, waiting like a storm cloud ready to strike. "We will fight," he vowed to the spirits around him. "Together, we will find a way." And as shadows danced in the distance, he turned his back on the darkness and gripped the luminous thread tightly, leading them forward into the promise of a new dawn, undaunted, unbroken. As Tom moved deeper into the light, he could still feel the lingering shadows at his back, thrumming with a restless energy that made the hairs on his arms stand up. The spirits followed closely, drawn by some unseen force, but he could see fear in their eyes, glimmers of doubt creeping into their hearts as the darkness clawed at their heels. Ahead, the light shimmered like a mirage, drawing them onward, but it felt like running toward a surface that kept shifting, the path beneath them turning uneven, as if the ground itself was alive and shifting in opposition. Little whispers of wind slid through the trees, bringing with them ghostly echoes of laughter, a sickly sweet sound that haunted the air like a cruel taunt. As they pressed on, each step resonated with a memory of despair, shadows stretching longer, twisting into eerie forms that flickered at the corners of their vision. The trees surrounding them began to change. Their bark grew twisted, gnarled, and dark, the branches clawing at the sky like the fingers of some sleep-deprived nightmare. There were no flowers, no colors, just shades of gray and black, sapping the warmth and hope from the air. The spirits moved cautiously, exchanging worried glances as the silence became thick with dread, a tension that wrapped tighter around them like an unseen noose. "Do you feel it?" one of the spirits whispered, their voice barely above a breath, the panic rising in their tone as they glanced over their shoulders. He could see a shifting in the darkness, creeping figures that seeped from between the trees, and it made the bile rise in his throat. He turned around, ready to face whatever was pursuing them, but the shadows were elusive, warping and slipping through the gaps as if they were too numerous to count, too fluid to hold. "Keep moving," Tom urged, although his own heart was pounding like a war drum in his ears. He could practically feel the shadows coil around his ankles, tugging at him, begging for him to stop, to surrender. The spirits hastened their pace, fear mingling with the desperation etched on their faces. They were a chorus of frail whispers, a tide of worry that threatened to drown him. Just beyond the ribbon of light, he could see fleeting silhouettes, their features obscured, but every chill that passed through his bones told him they were watching him. Suddenly, a chilling wail erupted from the depths of the trees, a sound so raw and agonizing it seemed to ripple the very air around them. The spirits flinched in response, eyes wide with terror. The once bright light they were seeking now shadowed beneath the weight of dread. "What was that?" one of them whimpered, their voice trembling as if they were about to snap, unravel completely under the pressure of the looming darkness. The woods felt alive now, breathing around them, each rustle sending waves of panic surging through the group. "I don't know," Tom barked back, adrenaline pumping through him as their surroundings closed in. "But we can't stop." He could see the darkness congealing behind, shifting like liquid smoke, and he felt the urgency clawing at his throat. "We have to keep going together." But it was then that the shadows surged, a wave of darkness that swallowed the little light they had found. For a moment, chaos erupted. The spirits yelled. Their whispers turned to frightened shouts, and Tom felt a tugging sensation, the urge to turn back to the familiar terrors that awaited. But he fought against it, feeling the weight of despair pull at him, threatening to drag him under. "Stay close," he yelled, desperation ringing in his voice as he caught one spirit's arm, dragging them along. But the dark forms began to separate from one another, grotesque and twisted, with features that shifted like oil on water. Sudden faces contorting into grotesque grins, hollow eyes that glared back at him, dripping with malice. The creatures floated just above the ground, their forms barely solid, and their mouths curled into sneers that sent chills skittering down his spine. "Tom," one spirit groaned, trembling as they stumbled, the shadows closing in so tightly he could feel the emptiness gnawing at their very souls. "They're coming for us." "I know. Focus on the light," he shouted, gritting his teeth together as they ran. But every stride he took felt heavier, a weight of unseen hands pressing down on him, slowing him, clawing at his resolve. He glanced back as the dark mass swirled behind them. Craning necks and faces formed from pure shadow, indistinguishable apart from the sharpness of their grins. The laughter grew louder, taunting, unsettling. It echoed around them, drowning out their fear, mingling with gasps and cries. Tom could feel the panic crackle beneath his skin, like static electricity urging him to surrender, to let the darkness envelop them once and for all. He sprinted forward, pulling the spirit along, the light flickering just ahead, leading them further away from this unfathomable darkness threatening to tear them apart. But they weren't alone anymore. Shadowy limbs reached out toward them, grasping at the spirits, fingers made of pure darkness grazing against flesh like icy breath. "Help! One spirit screamed, trying to break free from the grip of the shadows that coiled around them, like serpents suffocating. "Fight!" Tom cried, forcing himself to push ahead despite the uproar of panic cascading through them. He could sense the spirits wavering, hesitation creeping in like thick fog, and he clung tightly to the thread of light that was guiding them, feeling its warmth against the frigid air around him. "Tom, don't leave us," another spirit cried, their voice tinged with desperation, fear washing over them like the crashing tide. He could feel their hope fracturing, wavering amidst the relentless darkness, and it made his heart ache. "Just a little further," he urged, daring the shadows to come closer, to envelop him in their crushing grip. If he could reach the light, then maybe they all would be free. And yet, every step was measured, marked by the rhythm of dread and despair, shadows wrapping around him tighter, pulling, inching closer to swallow them whole. Suddenly, a powerful gust of wind howled through the clearing. Invisible spirits lifted in protest, shrieking in a chorus of pain as the branches creaked ominously. It felt as if the very trees were lamenting their fate, bending toward them as the darkness rushed in, malevolent and relentless. Tom could feel the suffocating weight of grief wash over him, saturating the air with despair, reminding him of all he wanted to escape. "Hold on," he yelled, more to himself than to the group, forcing himself to remember the light ahead, glimmers of hope sparking through the gloom. "We can't give in." But even through the rising tide of darkness that surrounded them, a deep-rooted sense of hopelessness tugged at his spirit, wrapping around him like an old friend, whispering promises of peace if he would only turn back and let it claim him. "Just take my hand," a voice coaxed softly, but there was nothing comforting about it. It felt slick and cold, dark like night, slithering through his thoughts. Tom clenched his jaw, pushing aside the temptation, striding hard into the breeze that tore at their clothes, a desperate bid to escape the tendrils of darkness that sought to drag him back into the abyss. The laughter grew more sinister, vibrating like a sickly rhythm, and just in his peripheral vision, he caught glimpses of lost faces emerging from the shadows, tears of sorrow tracing their cheeks. "Tom," another spirit pleaded, tugging at him, bewildered by the encroaching darkness. "We have to go back." "No," he shouted, bile rising in his throat as he fought against the urge to give in, to relent into the shadows that danced so invitingly beyond the thin veil of light. "We must keep moving." With every ounce of strength he had left, he charged forward, the light glimmering brighter just ahead like a beacon. But the shadows howled, furious wails shrieking into the night air around them, the darkness thrumming with rage as they wrapped tighter. Around him, tethering him to the pain and soul-wrenching sorrow that threatened to consume them all. The boundary between light and dark began to blur, reality shifting as nightmares reached out, fingers of gloom enveloping him. But still, he pressed on, using the very essence of what it meant to be alive, refusing to let their cries be the last haunting refrain. "Together," he yelled, his voice echoing amid the cacophony of shadows. "We will fight." And as he surged ahead, he vowed to keep going for as long as he had breath left in his lungs, each step becoming a testament of will against the darkness that threatened to steal their very souls. The spirits followed, hearts pounding as their essence joined together, a fragile but flickering light in the overwhelming yearning of despair that held the night in its cold embrace. But as they pushed deeper into the path ahead, fractured whispers of the past lingered, weaving through the shadows, coiling around them like serpents, pulling them tighter into a chilling embrace that made them shiver. It was just the beginning of their fight, and Tom refused to flinch, intent on reclaiming what had been lost, a flicker of determination igniting deep within, propelling them forward together. As they drew nearer to the edge of the light, it shimmered more fiercely, illuminating the path ahead, but the shadows shifted behind them, agitated and restless. They screamed in rising fury, letting out chilling wails that echoed through the trees, rippling through the air as the spirits faltered, the courage wavering beneath the breath of uncertain dread. Then with a crash, the shadows erupted forth like a tsunami, cascading toward the group, dark fingers clawing at the very fabric of reality. Tom's heart raced furiously as he felt the chilling absence of warmth, darkness gripping him with an urgency that sent shivers of panic coursing through him, urging him to look back. "Keep going," he shouted, drawing strength from the flickering light ahead, but behind him, the lost spirits writhed, their forms wavering, desperation clawing at their throats. Faces twisted in agony emerged from the swirling void of shadows, hollow eyes fixed on him, a spectacle of despair that gnawed at his resolve. "Tom!" one of them yelled, their voice even more frail, barely holding on. They want us!" The cries echoed into the gloom, chilling like a wintry breeze that froze the blood in his veins, each whisper slicing through the thick darkness. "Don't listen!" he shouted, a rush of resolve pushing its way through the choking atmosphere that threatened to envelop them all. But shadows grasped with insidious hands, and the spirits screamed as they faltered, shadows intertwining with them, binding them to the anguish that came crawling from the depths of hopelessness. "We can't." One spirit gasped as their form began to twist, stretched toward the waiting darkness that hovered like a predator just beyond reach. "Now!" Tom yelled, gathering every ounce of energy, racing forward into the light that flickered like a candle against the storm of despair around them. He reached beneath his heart, summoned courage, a fierce rock-solid determination that refused to tremble beneath the weight of shadows wrapping around him. He could feel the cold fingers clawing at his own skin, whispering fears that he would never escape, urging him to succumb to despair, but the warmth of the light beckoned. He surged onward, arm held high, dragging the spirits with him, each step becoming a sacred promise against the rising tide of darkness. "We are not lost," he shouted into the chaos, defiance ringing true in his voice. "We are still here," as they surged forward, desperate and unyielding, their very essence shimmering brighter. He could feel the shadows recoiling at the edge of the light, hesitating before approaching, their laughter morphing into shrill screams of indignation. The surge of desperation was palpable now, the shadows thrumming like an orchestra of dark emotions, a siren song luring, promising so many things: the promise of peace, the temptation of surrender. "Just let go," a voice whispered seductively, coiling around him like a serpent, filling his mind with dreadful images of loss, with dreams that tantalized him into submission. But he thrust back against those urges, a barrier raised within him that would not yield. "Not today," he roared, reaching for the heart of the light, igniting a flame within, a fiery determination rising through him as he pushed the attack back with sheer force of will. With a flicker of light as a rallying cry, he gathered the spirits closer, merging their hope into one fierce beacon against the consuming blackness around them. The shadows howled in fury, a wild shriek as hope surged, driving them back just enough to carve a path away from the frozen clutches of despair, threatening to steal away their essence and happiness. In that moment, the pulse of light grew stronger, swirling vertically around them, a protective cocoon pushing back with the unwavering strength of solidarity, illuminating the darkness scattered throughout the woods, casting long shadows and highlights along the twisted trees. "We will escape," he shouted, certainty brimming over, filling him with fierce energy as it spread like wildfire among the spirits, igniting their own resolve. With swift determination, they surged ahead, hearts racing as they created rhythm against the dark tide, feeling the power of togetherness surge through them as they created rhythm against the dark tide, feeling the power of togetherness surge through them as they raced through the shadows. The light flickered and pulsed, each heartbeat a beacon against the overwhelming despair swirling around them. But just as they believed they were making headway, the shadows coalesced, thickening like a fog that enveloped their senses, distorting the very air they breathed. The trees around them whispered secrets woven with malice, branches creaking ominously, echoing the laughter that had grown even more twisted. Visions flared in Tom's mind, images of those they had lost, faces contorted with torment, their cries seeping into the thick layers of darkness. "Tom," one spirit whispered, their voice tremoring, fear lacing every syllable. "What if we can't escape? What if it's just us against them?" The shadows reacted, the darkness curling tighter around them, twisting like living smoke, aching to pull them back into an abyss. Tom felt despair clawing at his heart, icy fingers digging deep, threatening to snuff out the flicker of hope they had ignited. He could see figures shifting just beyond their reach, specters that flickered in and out of existence, once lost souls trapped for eternity. And with every heartbeat, he realized they were desperate for something more sinister. The laughter morphed once again, ringing out like a cacophony of despair, teasing and tormenting them, reminding them of all that was at stake. "No!" Tom shouted, bracing himself against the wave of fear that crashed into him. "We won't fall into your darkness." The words hung heavy in the air, met with an eerie silence that pressed against them, thick and suffocating. Then, without warning, the shadows lunged, sinuous tendrils reaching for them like a hungry beast emerging from a crypt. The dim light cast long, ghostly shapes that danced against the trees, and every shape morphed into a familiar face, twisted and grotesque. Tom could see the pain etched in their features, the anguish of souls forever caught in the dark. It was a reminder of what they were, fighting against, but it also seeped into his resolve, leaving an ache in his chest that threatened to undo him. The shadows hissed, a sound like nails dragging across metal, filling the air with a sickly sweet stench of decay. "You cannot fight forever," the voices taunted from the edges of the gloom, slipping into their minds like a poison. "You are ours, as they once were. Join us." Every spirit felt the pull, the seductive whispering that coiled around their hearts. Tom could feel it too, the lure of surrender tinged with promises of peace and solace. He gritted his teeth, focusing on the flickering light ahead, centered in his chest like a fire battling against the encroaching winter. "Together," remember, he urged, as shadows surged and narrowed, clawing at their forms, testing the strength of their unity. "We are stronger than this." In a desperate bid, they pushed forward, hand in hand, weaving through the ethereal tendrils that lashed out, striking at their resolve. Each cry pierced the air, a symphony of despair, every torment echoing in their ears. But together they forged ahead, illuminating the surrounding darkness with the fire of their will. Every step felt weighted, like they were trudging through molasses, the shadows clawing at them with an urgency that felt almost alive. Just as his strength seemed nearly spent, newfound energy surged through the group, bright and electric. Tom, gasping for breath, could feel the essence of the spirits merging with his own, a kaleidoscope of determination propelling them forward, the shadows recoiling slightly at the sudden blaze of collective will. But the hold of the ancient evil was relentless. The figures morphed again, taunting them with haunting echoes of laughter as snapped branches and rustling leaves resonated deep within the darkness, a reminder of the dangers that lingered just beyond their grasp. Flashes of old memories surged through Tom, images of friends and family lost, their faces washed in grief and pain, urging him to listen to the whispers that echoed around. The shadows distorted, shapes melding into the faces of his loved ones. "Tom, why did you leave us?" they echoed, their voices draped in sorrow and accusation, a cascade of guilt clawing at him. "No," he shouted, shaking his head violently, clamping down on the visions. "You can't have me." The shadows recoiled as if struck, but they quickly surged back, hungry and relentless. "Then fight harder," they hissed a challenge, a taunt that spurred chilling laughs through the dark. It felt as if they were waiting for him to falter, to give in, a ravenous hunger flickering beneath the surface as Tom's heart raced. With each moment, the light waned, flickering like a candle caught in a gale. But in that flicker, a thought ignited. Maybe it was time to embrace the very things that haunted his dreams. "If we are to fight, let's fight for the ones we love," he cried, eyes burning with determination. With every word, he reiterated the truth. Their friends, their families, their lost hopes. And he could feel the spirits responding, strengthening against the exhaustion that lay heavy upon their hearts. Suddenly, the light shone brighter, an explosive burst that sent shockwaves through the air, burning the shadows momentarily, illuminating the forest like a dawn breaking after a long night. The spirits rallied around Tom, drawing strength, the barrier between light and dark shifting as fear transformed into resolve. Every spirit began to connect, their energies intertwining, fueling each other with newfound purpose amid flickering shadows that writhed in pain. Shrieks spiraling within the night as they screamed in frustration, the darkness clawing at the edges of the light with sheer fury. The ground trembled beneath them as they moved forward, engulfed in a pristine glow, but still surrounded by the shadowy horrors that twisted through the underbrush, distorted forms creeping closer, baring their teeth in malicious grins. "You cannot escape your past," they wailed, voices harmonizing in an unsettling chorus that echoed all around. The shadows surged forward, hungrily reaching out with clawed hands, aiming for their tethered light, wanting to claw it away, to extinguish it in a cacophony of darkness. "No!" Tom bellowed into the night, the anguish of the spirits woven into his own rage, pushing forward, fueled by their shared grief and anger. They would not let the past consume them. Not today. Not ever. The thought burned fiercely in their hearts as they raced ahead, leaving the grasp of despair behind. But even as they fled, the shadows laughed, an echoing reminder of their lingering presence, swirling like a storm, hungry to reclaim what once belonged to them. A reminder that somewhere, they were still waiting, shrouded in darkness. Tom could feel it too, a chill creeping back, but the light around him held steady, united strong against the beckoning void, threatening to pull them backward, to reclaim all that had been lost and more. "Don't look back," he urged, even as the shadows whipped around, as if trying to trap them beneath their burden of regret. "We are more than what has happened to us." Each spirit took a gasp of breath, the truth resonating strongly against the clamor of the shadows. He clung to that idea, holding it tightly as he pressed on, refusing to let the darkness drag them backward, seeing the light just beyond the trees, brighter than he had imagined. It was hope, a promise of freedom, and with each step, they summoned the strength of their past to light the way forward, ready to face whatever horror lay lurking ahead. The shadows tightened their grip, a shivering, whispering thread in the air, echoing the thoughts that gave rise to doubt. Fear creeping beneath the surface, scratching at willpower. Tom could feel the tug as if roots were anchoring him into the ground, desperate to tug him back, but the fire within blazed brighter, igniting their collective spirit. They were no longer just spirits lost, but warriors, ready to fight back against the relentless tide of darkness that sought to shroud their very existence. And as they sprinted toward the glow that beckoned them like a lighthouse on the stormy sea, the wailing shadows behind them felt more like a memory than a threat, the power of their unity forging ahead, a testament to everything they had endured together. The darkness roared, but they could brave it. They had to. Together, they would face the abyss. Together, they would face the abyss, transcending the pain that once tethered them to its grip. As they hurtled forward, the flickering light became a pulsating beacon, illuminating the twisted path that lay ahead. But each step seemed fraught with danger. Each echo of their footfalls met with the silence of the dark woods surrounding them. The shadows clawed at their heels, wild and unpredictable like a tempest, hungry to reclaim their lost souls. With every moment, eerie whispers floated around them, ghastly murmurs weaving through the branches like chilling winds, speaking temptations that dug deep into their minds. "Remember the sweet embrace of surrender," they cooed, voices dripping with malice. The warmth of giving in, of letting go. The air thickened, wrapping around Tom and the spirits with cold fingers that crept under their skin, coaxing out memories buried deep within. He felt a sickening sense of nostalgia, reminiscent of ghosts long forgotten. The faces of friends who had fallen away flashing before him like sinister apparitions, each recounting their moments of despair. Shadows danced in his periphery, transforming into twisted figures that reached out, their fingers resembling skeletal hands, desperate for a connection that would pull him down into the void. But even as they tried to submerge him in the weight of his own fears, Tom held tightly to the memories of love and laughter, the warmth of their shared moments. He could feel the swell of the spirits around him, their determination rising upon the winds of sorrow, flooding him with strength. "We're not alone," he whispered, realizing as he spoke that together they could light a flame that would pierce through the chilling mist that surrounded them. Summoning that idea, he began to chant an old refrain, a melody rooted in joy and connectivity, and the spirits echoed his calls. The sound surged through the darkness, brightening the gloom that sought to close in on them, creating ripples of light that pushed against the looming shadows. In that moment, they dared to gather their strength, wielding their pain against the darkness that wished to envelop them like a shroud. Yet, the shadows writhed, unwilling to relent. With every note they sang, the figures morphed into terrifying forms, grotesque caricatures filled with agony, face after face merging into a distorted nightmare, eyes wide with yearning and despair. As the collective wails of anguish crescendoed and crashed around them, it turned into a nightmarish symphony of sorrow that echoed deep through the trees, threatening to drown out their light. The ground beneath them trembled, branches creaked ominously as if the forest itself joined in the lament, the very earth rippling with the rage of unseen forces. Tom could feel the pressure building around them, overwhelming and suffocating, echoing the tumultuous unease that lay within his heart. "We have to keep going," he cried, pushing hard against the mounting dread. With those words, they ran faster, fear coursing through them, an electric pulse that fueled their spirits even more. Yet as they rushed ahead, they stumbled upon a clearing cloaked in an eerie mist, the air heavy with an otherworldly silence that hung like a dark curtain over a forgotten stage. Hollow trees loomed around them, branches curling in unnatural shapes, and the ground was littered with remnants of what had once thrived, the skeletal remains of long ago life twisted into grotesque images of fear. Broken toys and decayed flowers scattered like lost dreams, whispers tangled in the wind urging them to linger, to lose themselves within the desolation. Tom felt a chill race down his spine as the shadows danced closer, entangling the spirits like a net, pulling them into a web of despair that seemed inescapable. The air shimmered, distorting their senses, the mirage of what once was hauntingly palpable. He could see the faces of the lost, emerging from the darkness, eyes hollow and pleading, like shades trapped in perpetual torment. "Join us," they murmured, their fragile voices weaving a tapestry of sorrow, echoing within their very souls. "You can't escape what you are." "No!" Tom screamed, shoving the memories aside, gripping tightly to the light that swelled within him, as fear threatened to consume them all. "We will not give in." In that moment of defiance, the shadows recoiled, screeching like banshees, their forms writhing in agony, desperate to reclaim what they once held. But fueled by a sudden surge of clarity, their light shone brighter than before, pushing through the haze of darkness that sought to smother them. Yet even as they fought to break free, Tom sensed something darker lurking further ahead. A figure emerged from the depths of the surrounding gloom, cloaked in long tattered robes swirling like the night itself, a silhouette that seemed to drink in the darkness, exuding an aura of dread. It moved with a haunting grace, stalking them like a predator, sizing up its prey, its face hidden beneath a hood that cast a shadow over its features. As it stepped forward, a bone-chilling breeze swept through the clearing, carrying with it the stench of decay and despair, a reminder of the lives snuffed out by its unforgiving presence. "You think you can escape?" it hissed, voice a low rumble, echoing through the air like a thunderclap, heavy with the weight of countless souls. "You are but fleeting lights in a world engulfed by shadows." Tom's breath caught in his throat, the air thickening with the sense of impending doom. The shadows surged at the figure's command, swirling around them like a tempest, addled by the figure's presence. Though fear tightened around him, he felt the grip of the spirits beside him, their presence bolstering his resolve. They had already fought too hard to be swallowed by despair now. "No," he shouted, the conviction ringing out against the abyss. "We choose to live." With raw power drawn from the depth of their collective pain and determination, the spirits echoed Tom's cry, their voices joining in fierce unison against the ominous figure. The light around them flared brighter, illuminating the encroaching darkness, sending shockwaves that flung back the shadows that sought to reclaim them. But the cloaked figure merely seemed amused, a chilling smile spreading across its unseen face. "Then come to me," it beckoned, eyes glinting with a sinister hunger, "for I shall feed on that defiance." And as the forces collided, light against the encroaching dark, Tom and the spirits pressed on, unwilling to give in as the shadows coiled tighter, embracing the fear that trembled around them. They would stand against this nightmare, hold on to the hope that surged within them, battling for their freedom even as the shadows whispered, forming together a grotesque tapestry of fear. They were not just fighting for their own lives anymore. Together, they were battling for the souls that had been lost, the spirits trapped in the void, the echoes of pain that rippled through the darkness. Together they would refuse to let the abyss consume them whole. It was no longer a mere escape. It was an uprising against the suffocating grip of despair, a force to reclaim their very existence. As the shadows writhed and loaded with dread, laughter echoed like thunder around them, fierce and taunting, testing their resolve and sanity. But in the heart of that chaotic storm, the flicker of hope burned brighter than ever, a blaze that would light the pathway through hell itself. And with each breath they drew, they fortified the strength of their light against the dark, prepared to face whatever horrors awaited them. As they pressed further into the forest, the darkness seemed to bend and twist around them, almost sentient in its desire to ensnare them. Yet they moved forward, hand in hand, hearts united against the suffocating gloom. They would rise against the torment of memories, even if they had to battle the most formidable evil waiting ahead. That final confrontation drew ever closer, but together, they believed they could harness the strength of their pain, break the cycle of agony that sought to imprison them. And with every anguished howl from the darkness, they became the flame daring to challenge the night. As they pressed forward, the air grew thicker, a heavy fog seeping in that wrapped around them like cold fingers, muffling their footsteps and distorting the sounds of the forest to an eerie silence. The path became winding and narrow, twisting like a serpent, bearing them deeper into the heart of darkness. Each step felt like a descent into a nightmare from which there was no awakening, and a chill crept into Tom's bones as he felt the stares of unseen. Eyes watching, waiting, lurking just beyond the veil. Shadows twisted unnaturally along the ground, flickering like candle flames in a draft. Tom could see vague shapes bobbing just out of sight, like lost souls lingering in the gloom, their mournful faces a tapestry of heartache. Whispers slithered through the chill, like the rustle of leaves but shaped into words, each gasp and sigh seeming to jerk at the strings of his memories. "You can't run forever," they taunted, a soft, seductive croon that wrapped around him, reminiscent of tender moments turned bitter, heartbreaking love twisted into sorrow. The forest closed in tighter, trees arching above as if to form a malefic tunnel, their branches curling toward him like skeletal hands yearning to drag him into the bark. The deeper they went, the more he could hear the thuds of his own heart pounding like a war drum, desperation mingling with fear. He stole glances at the spirits beside him, feeling their apprehension mirrored in their hollow gazes. The pain and anguish they carried a weight that threatened to crush him if he dared falter. Then came a rustling sound, low and menacing, eerie enough to freeze the very air around them. The fog thickened, swirling with an almost sentient intent, wrapping itself tighter around their legs as if bidding them to kneel, to surrender to the darkness. Tom's breath quickened, along with the pace of his heart. The whispers grew louder, merging into a cacophony of despair. Embrace it, let go of the pain, join the lost. His resolve teetered at the brink as he spun around, searching for the source of the voice that pushed against his mind. But the fog formed a tapestry of confusion, obscuring clarity. And just as he turned back, he saw it. A figure camouflaged within the shadows, a twisted reflection of despair. It moved slowly, cruelly, a seam of darkness much deeper than the rest. A streaming silhouette that flickered at the edges of reality, unsettling in its absence of form. "Leave him," it hissed, its voice a weapon, soft yet sharp like broken glass. "You cannot protect him from this." Tom felt the ground shift beneath him as the spirit closest to him faltered, swayed by the enveloping dread, caught between fear and defiance. They were slipping, starting to fade like smoke rising from extinguished embers. And in that moment, the figure stretched its long, skeletal hand, beckoning, an invitation wrapped in an eternal chatter of sorrow. "Give in," it urged, lunging towards Tom with a grace as lethal as the very shadows surrounding them. He felt the air spark with tension, a heaviness clashing against the light they carried. He clenched his fists, fighting back the suffocating grip of despair that sought to drown him, his mind grappling with the images of those who'd already succumbed, those who had already embraced the darkness. Before he could lose himself, a furious wind cut through the mist, swirling around them and pushing the shadows back. Tom felt it, the strength of the spirits, resurgent in the air around him, fortifying his resolve, the energy igniting a flicker of hope deep within. He could sense it now. They were rising against the urge to submit, fighting the call of the void. "We choose to remember," Tom shouted, voice resonating through the oppressive silence, fueled by determination. "We remember our love, our lives." The shadows screeched, shrieking as if wounded by his declaration, recoiling in horror, and the fog blanched, forming paths in its depths, revealing a flicker of light dancing in the distance. Tom led the spirits onward, urging them with every ounce of strength he had within, feeling the warmth of their unity burning brighter against the chilling presence. But as they pushed forward, eerie sounds began to crescendo, a cacophony of tormented cries, a symphony of lost souls that fluttered around the trees like a sinister lullaby, claws scraping against the ground, the rustle of unseen wings beating like a horror beyond the fathom of nightmares. An overwhelming sense of dread flooded towards him as the world around them began to warp, twisted branches drawing closer, like nooses ready to envelop them, trapping them in a cage of despair. "You cannot escape what you are," the figure hissed, now towering taller, its face still hidden yet radiating a dreadful, uncanny aura, as if it wore darkness like a second skin. "You will be consumed by the very memories you cling to." Tendrils of shadows lashed out, slithering like snakes, wrapping around his ankles, trying to pull him down into the pitch-black abyss that yawned beneath them. In that moment, Tom slammed his eyes shut, focusing solely on the light within, the warmth of shared laughter, the bond of friends, the joy of stunning memories painted in vibrant hues, all the love that tied them together. Somewhere deep inside, a spark ignited, bright and blazing, growing until he felt it seeping through his very soul, flooding the shadows around them with radiant light. They were strong, and so long as they remembered, so long as they fought, there was hope. He could feel it coursing through him, lifting him against the suffocating weight of the darkness, an unstoppable force fueled by their shared love that began to push back against the oppressive claws of despair. With one final cry, Tom lunged forward, bursting through the shadows as they reeled back, bright lights surging behind him, spiraling out like an unfurling sun, engulfing the dark figure, who screeched in outraged fury. The forest swirled around them, transforming, branches opening up like welcoming arms as he charged ahead, spirits rallying close behind him, shadows retreating in wild disarray. But just as they thought they had broken free, tendrils of darkness wrapped around them again, stronger now, pulling, tugging, trying to rip them apart. In that moment of turmoil, a deafening roar erupted from the depths of the forest, a harrowing sound, as if the ground itself cried out in pain and fury, sending shivers down Tom's spine. And then the shadows surged back with renewed ferocity, swirling around them in a vortex that devoured all hope. Tom felt cold pinpricks pierce through his skin. Memories spiraled into a chaotic whirlwind, each flicker reminding him of everything he had lost, everything that had led him to this brink. "This is your fate," the figure lashed out, malevolence dripping from each word, "to join those who came before you in eternal night." But Tom and the spirits mirrored their defiance with a shared cry as they harnessed the core of their light, fighting back against the relentless storm, refusing to surrender to the encroaching darkness. "We are not alone," he bellowed, a blaze igniting in their chests that pulsed in sync, pushing against the relentless tide, determined to turn back the abyss, refusing to be just another set of lost souls grieved in the darkness. The forest trembled in response, the shriek of anguish from the figure unraveling as they surged onward, fueled not only by love, but by the fury of resilience, declaring war against the shadows that had so long hunted them. The air crackled with tension, light and dark crashing together in a furious storm, but they would not waver. They would not drown in the silence that beckoned them. Together they would bring the dawn. As they surged forward, the ground beneath them shifted violently, shaking with an unholy rage. The trees twisted and cracked, their bark splintering, revealing dark veins filled with something sinister, as if the very essence of fear pulsed through the forest. Tom stumbled, but quickly regained his footing, the light inside him blazing even brighter, fiercely pushing away the shadows that clawed around him, hungry and relentless. The fog roiled, becoming a creature of its own, slithering and coiling around their ankles like a serpent eager to ensnare them. Whispers of torment echoed through the air. "You belong to us," they hissed, each word a chilling reminder of despair, trying to weave through Tom's defenses, trying to seep into his mind and crush his will. But amidst the cacophony, he could still hear the voices of his friends, their determination echoing in his heart. "We choose to fight. We choose to remember." Each voice became a thread, weaving their collective strength, stitching together their fears into armor that shielded them against the onslaught. Just as his heart swelled with warmth, a thunderous roar ripped through the air, shaking him to the core. From the depths of the forest, the shadowy figure recoiled, its form contorting into grotesque shapes as it unleashed a chilling fury, reaching out with long, twisted fingers, each claw a shard of pure darkness aimed at tearing them apart. Tom could see the malevolence in its eyes, pools of black swirling with rage and pain, thirsting for the agony of the living. "Your hope is a flicker," it shrieked, the sound echoing like icy fingers crawling down his spine, "and we will extinguish it. You will know true despair." With each word, shadows thickened around him, wrapping tighter, constricting like a vice. The air grew frigid, and he could feel the souls of the lost rising around them, their anguish cries a haunting melody that drummed against his temples. He felt their pain like a heavy weight, pressing down with an intensity that threatened to crush him, filling him with dread. But Tom wouldn't yield. He drew in a deep breath, steadying himself, as everything he treasured burned brightly in his mind. The warmth of laughter, the joyous gatherings, the moments of bliss that had woven their lives together. He reached out to his friends, feeling their determination merge with his own, a torrent of light bursting forth, pushing back the dark. "We will not be your prey," he declared, voice firm, shaking away the chill wrapping around him, channeling his fear into a fiery resolve. "We stand united." The shadows wavered for a moment, flickering as they recoiled from the brightness radiating from his outstretched hand. But the figure only laughed, a ghastly sound that sent tremors through the forest, returning with undiminished malice. It loomed larger, taking shape, the darkness gathering around it, becoming a monstrous thing that twisted and expanded, filling the air with a stench of decay that left a sour taste in Tom's mouth. "You think you can defy me?" it bellowed, the ground shaking beneath their feet as the trees bent in submission, their branches scratching at each other like bone on bone. The very forest seemed to comprehend its power, quivering with the oppressive weight of history soaked in despair. Tom and his friends could feel the palpable sense of dread coiling around them, the roots of the forest lashing out, clawing at their feet, pulling at their skin, as if the earth itself sought to reclaim them, to wrap them in its dark embrace. He fought against it, his heart racing, pulse beating in sync with the disdainful cries of the night. Spirits trapped, whispers echoing the forlorn promise of eternal night. For a fleeting moment, doubt seeped into his thoughts, but then he remembered the faces he fought for, sturdy and resolute, filling him with an invincible hope. Together, they formed an unbreakable cord against the veil of darkness closing in on them. Each person stood their ground, an emblem of resilience that broke through the suffocating anxiety tangling around them. "We will break this curse," Tom shouted, his voice cutting through the swirling mist with newfound vigor. "The light will prevail." With a deep breath, he drew upon every ounce of strength as they raised their arms in unison, allowing their combined energy to surge forth, casting away the shadows momentarily, revealing glimpses of hope within the encroaching darkness. The cold fog reluctantly withdrew, swirling away at the command of their fiery declaration, yielding to the warmth of their unity. But the shadowy figure was relentless, swinging its elongated arms in a fury, darkness pooling around them, wrestling against their resistance. It lunged forward, claws ripping through the air, a flash of black that threatened to shatter their spirit and envelop them fully into its embrace. Closest to Tom, one of his friends faltered, fear flashing across her eyes, and in that fleeting second, the encroaching darkness trapped her, pulling her towards the abyss that beckoned fiercely, the cries of lost souls clawing at her mind. "No," Tom shouted, horror flooding through him, heart pounding as he reached out towards her, desperate to clutch her hand, weaving through the chaos as shadows writhed underfoot, their forms reaching, grasping, whispering temptations that wrapped around her heart like constricting vines. "Join us, join the forgotten," they urged, their voices a chilling blend of sorrow and promise. There is no escape from this fate. But Tom refused to let despair creep in. With every ounce of resolve burning within, he fought against the onslaught of shadows, his voice rising above the cacophony. "Remember who you are," he cried. "You are more than this darkness." As if hearing his plea, his friend's eyes flickered with recognition, the light inside her igniting once more, breaking through the haze of doubt. Slowly, she began to stand taller, shaking off the tendrils winding around her, the warmth of their shared memories flooding her heart, a glow pulsing bright enough to slice through the shadow. Together, she whispered fiercely, drawing strength from their bond, and with a surge of defiance, she broke free, sprinting back into Tom's waiting arms. Tom felt her warmth pouring into him, that embrace rekindling hope with every breath they took. The shadows screamed as they recoiled from the sudden burst of light, the forest trembling violently. But Tom and his friends didn't pause. Emboldened by one another, they pressed forward, each step charged with determination, propelling through the crowd of lurking shadows that recoiled and screeched, their cries echoing through the night air like a malevolent symphony. The figure furiously swirled, trying to derail their resolve. But together they formed a blinding barrier of light, bound by memories and love that refused to fade into darkness. It was both a shield and a sword, piercing through the desperation surrounding them, driving back the living nightmares that coveted their despair. "This ends now," Tom shouted, the fire within igniting their hearts as the light became a crescendo, surging forward and erupting against the looming figure with beautiful ferocity. In that moment, the darkness roared in agony, the sound reverberating through their bones as the light shattered the very essence of despair that had sought to bind them. The silhouettes of lost souls, caught in the throes of existence, swirled around, a tempest of anguish transforming, flickering with promise of release. Tom grasped his friend's hands tightly, all of them standing firm as the shadows writhed, collapsing and falling apart like ash, consumed by the brightness they wielded. The roots of the forest withdrew, and what was once an overwhelming heaviness transformed into an ethereal light. dispersing the encroaching darkness as if blown away by a powerful wind. And then, amid the chaos, a dawning moment of clarity surged, the figures of lost souls swirling with newfound light, their anguished cries transforming into whispers of gratitude, echoing through the forest like the whispering sound of wind through trees, a release finally aching through the night. With that clarity igniting like a flame, illuminating dusk, the forest began to change, the twisting boughs straightening, and the gloom lifting as if banished by an unseen hand, revealing the beauty hidden beneath the shroud of despair. Slowly, the shadows receded, retreating like a tide drawing back from the shore, leaving behind a glimmering trail of white light that danced in the clearing ahead. "We're almost there," Tom breathed, breathless yet resolute, feeling the warmth of hope swelling within him again. United, they stepped towards the light, the remnants of darkness trailing behind like shadows left behind in the wake of the morning sun, each wavering flicker a testament to their triumph. But the forest still held its secrets, and as they approached, the air shifted again, a sudden chill rising from the clearing ahead. Although the shadows had ebbed, the danger felt far from over, lurking just at the edge, and Tom could sense it. The forest was alive, breathing, waiting, as if it held one last chilling revelation before they could fully embrace their escape from the void. "Stay close," he urged to his friends, their hands still intertwined, feeling the pulse of unity thrumming between them, each heartbeat a lifeline forging through the uncertainty. As the light grew brighter, beckoning them forward into the heart of the unknown, what lay ahead remained veiled in the dappled glow, a mystery intertwined with fear and hope, drawing them ever closer. But Tom felt steadfast, gripping tighter, resolved to bring the dawn not just for themselves, but for those who had fought, who had lost, and who deserved to be remembered. Away from the bitter shadows, they would face the last test, determined to reclaim what was rightfully theirs, ready to join the light that awaited them. For together they would confront whatever monstrous truth was lurking deeper in the woods. As they stepped into the heart of the forest, the air thickened around them, a heavy silence descending like an oppressive blanket, wrapping each of them in an unsettling embrace. The flickering light they had conjured dimmed, swallowed by the towering trees that loomed overhead, their gnarled branches twisting together like skeletal fingers, reaching for the sky with an eerie grace. Every rustle of leaves sounded like whispers, hushed voices threading through the stillness, secrets leaking out from the shadows, curling around them like smoke. Tom could feel his pulse quicken, the tension coiling tighter within his chest. It was as if the forest itself was alive, breathing, watching, waiting for the inevitable moment to pounce. Each step they took felt heavier, as if the ground beneath them were dragging them back, reluctant to let go of its grip. "Do you hear that?" one of his friends whispered, her voice trembling, eyes wide as she scanned the darkened underbrush, shadows creeping along the ground like lurking phantoms. The air felt electric with anticipation, every sound amplified in the silence, the chirping of crickets fading into the background of their fear. The forest deepened, an intricate maze of shadows twisting in every direction. Tom caught sight of flickering shadows dancing among the trees, shapes moving that didn't belong, like the memories of what once was, replaying in a tormenting loop. He squinted, trying to focus, but the more he looked, the more distorted the figures became. They seemed to morph into grotesque versions of their friends and families, twisted smiles stretched across hollow faces, eyes devoid of life. "We need to keep moving," Tom urged, fighting against the creeping dread that sprawled across his thoughts like a thick fog. Just then, a low, guttural growl echoed through the trees, reverberating off the trunks, a sound so primal that it sent chills cascading down his spine. The noise seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, bouncing off the darkened corners of the woods, a warning that sent shivers across their skin. "What was that?" another friend gasped, gripping Tom's arm tightly, her fingers digging into his flesh like claws. Do you think it's coming for us?" Before Tom could answer, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, a subtle but unmistakable quake that ruptured the silence. sending echoes through the underbrush. Something was shifting within the earth, something massive hidden just below the surface, clawing its way up towards them as if it had awaited this very moment. They stood frozen, hearts pounding in unison, the air heavy with a foreboding that hung thick and suffocating. Tom felt an instinctive pull to run, to escape whatever horror was lurking just out of sight, but his legs felt rooted to the spot, as if the ground had claimed them, ensnared them in its grasp. The shadows began to swirl again, forming deeper shapes, twisting and contorting into forms that blended seamlessly with the darkness, like monsters feasting on fear. Back to back, Tom finally commanded, adrenaline surging through him as they slowly formed a circle, their backs touching, a tiny fort against the suffocating gloom. But the tendrils of shadow pressed in closer, hungry and insatiable, the very essence of the forest yearning to reclaim them, to pull them into oblivion. "Tom, what if?" one friend started, but her voice trailed off as a deafening howl ripped through the stillness. It was an animalistic cry, mournful and menacing, reverberating like an echo of lost souls trapped in endless torment. The trees around them seemed to sway in response, their leaves whispering secrets that sent shivers racing along their spines. "We can't let it get to us," Tom shouted, trying to project confidence, but even he could feel the tremor in his voice, almost drowned out by the monstrous growl that snarled from the thickening shadows. He peered into the darkness, terrified of what he might see. The shadows shimmered, and something large moved, outlined in the dim light, something that bore the shape of a monstrous beast, dripping with the energy of despair. As it slinked forward, its eyes glowed like dying embers, green and sickly, promising pain and suffering, the kind that sank deep into the bones, twisting reality and drawing them closer to madness. Tom's heart raced as he caught hints of gnashing teeth and glistening fangs, each movement echoing with the weight of centuries of sorrow long buried in the forest floor. "Stand firm," he shouted, forcing his voice above the sounds of terror. "We are not afraid." The beast lunged, its maw opening wide, the darkness itself spilling forth like a thick, viscous fluid. Tom and his friends braced themselves as shadows coalesced into dark forms, tendrils whipping around them, wrapping like chains still dripping with that all-consuming dread. The forest seemed to close in, swallowing the last remnants of light, the certainty of the outside world slipping away, leaving only a hollow grasp of anxiety. Just as the creeping despair threatened to take hold, an unexpected flash erupted against the thick darkness, shimmering with brilliant light that cut through the shadows like a knife. Tom glanced around, his ears straining, and he felt the warmth of resolve ignite within him, a spark that dared to challenge the encroaching dread. "We're not alone," he said quietly. The air shifted again, a gentle breeze washing over them amidst the darkness, whispering promises of hope. Ghosts of the lost, those caught in despair, rose in swirling forms, flickering in the dim light as if rallying to their aid, urging them to fight back, to reclaim what was theirs. "That's it. Remember them," he encouraged his friends, feeling a rush of energy pulse through the barrier they formed. It was an anchor amidst the chaos, a reminder of everything that had brought them here, the love they fought for entwining with resolve, transforming them into something far more powerful than mere mortals facing the void. The shadows hissed, recoiling at the strength of their unified bond, the dark beast hesitating, snarling, eyes flashing with rage. Tom could see the shadows crack, dancing back from the light, as if drawn to the warmth of their memories, threading together into a tapestry that shone like gold beneath the oppressive blanket of night. "Focus on the light," Tom urged, heart swelling with purpose, as they willed their energy into a formidable force. One by one, memories shaped themselves into glowing orbs of light, lifting into the air, illuminating the encroaching darkness, each flicker a testament to their love, their hope, a shield against despair. For a moment, it felt like the weight of the world tilted, the shadows shrieking in pain as the brightness erupted from their combined strength. Tom felt it in his bones, the heat spreading, thawing the cold grip of fear that had threatened to consume them. As the brilliance surged, the monstrous figure recoiled, fear etched in its distorted features, its shadow twisting violently as the encroaching light tore through the depths of despair. Yet it wasn't over. The shadows snarled and lashed out in fury, the darkness roaring against the assault, trying to consume the light even as it illuminated the path ahead. "We keep pushing," Tom shouted, the warmth igniting an uncontainable force within him. "We won't let the shadows win." Together they shouted, voices mingling in defiance as they called upon every memory, every moment they cherished, coalescing into a brilliant surge that erupted into the dark, a blast of warmth and brilliance that sent shockwaves through the very fabric of the forest. The shadows dared not linger, retreating and twisting, howling in anguish as the light pierced their hearts. But still, there was something lurking, something sinister that remained just beyond the threshold, lurking at the edge of awareness. Darker than the shadows, shivering closer, promising relief through despair, calling softly even as Tom and his friends fought on, the forest alive with the echoes of their struggle. They struck forward, fueled by the memories of those they loved, determination coursing through their veins like fire. With each step, the sounds of the past twisted into a melody, merging with their hope, a song woven with the threads of unity as they faced the heart of darkness, where true terror awaited just beyond the flickering veil. Together, Tom whispered, breath steady, eyes locked on the unfolding chaos, ready for whatever lay ahead. The air thickened, and with that, they pressed on, knowing the shadows couldn't hold them captive forever. The last battle was looming, and they were ready to confront the deepest fears buried within, a storm approaching, ready to break free, ready to break through anything that stood in their way. The air around them buzzed with an intensity that crackled like static electricity, drawing the shadows and even closer, wrapping them in a shroud of unease. Tom could feel the oppressive darkness creeping up his legs, trying to entwine him in its icy grasp, but he pressed forward, the warmth of his friends bolstering his courage, deepening his resolve. Together, they were a beacon, a flicker of light in an abyss that seemed endless, but the darkness loomed like a predator watching its prey with hungry eyes. As they ventured deeper, the forest transformed into a macabre landscape that sent shivers racing down their spines. The trees twisted grotesquely, bark peeling back to reveal something dark and rotting within, like ancient veins exposed to the harsh wind. Each snap of a twig beneath their feet echoed like a gunshot in the encroaching silence, the woods swallowing the sound before it could echo back. A dread sank into their bones, a palpable weight that felt almost tangible, each breath more difficult than the last. Wisps of cold fog crawled along the ground, swirling around their ankles, beckoning them to listen to the stories held within ancient roots. Whispers filled the air, unintelligible but urgent, growing in intensity, wrapping around their minds with tendrils of despair that threatened to pull them down into the depths. Tom clenched his fists, forcing his focus on the light they created, a barrier against the lurking despair. "Stay close," he murmured, glancing back at his friends, whose faces were pale, eyes wide with terror as the shadows danced just out of sight, teasing them with glimpses of twisted forms that seemed to morph and shift, their dark silhouettes undulating with a life of their own. In the corner of his vision, something flickered heavily in the underbrush, but each time he turned, it melted back into the darkness, leaving only the echo of that guttural growl, vibrating through the very core of the earth. "What if it knows what we're trying to do?" his friend whispered, an edge of panic threading through her voice, her gaze darting around as if expecting the shadows to lunge at any moment. Tom could feel the weight of her fear, an anchor that threatened to drag them down. "We have to believe," he replied, his voice low but firm. "If we don't, we'll never make it out." As they pressed through the tangled undergrowth, the forest began to shift, pathways coiling and twisting like a maddened serpent, leading them deeper into the heart of darkness. The air thickened with the scent of decay, a rancid aroma that made their stomachs turn. Rotting leaves crunched beneath their feet, and the ground felt spongy, as if it were alive, pulsing and ready to swallow them whole, eager to drag them into its suffocating depths. The shadows closed in, swirling, converging like a storm about to break, and from within that chaos, a figure began to materialize, rising slowly from the darkened earth. Its form was indistinct, shifting like smoke, with eyes that burned with an unholy light, a malevolent gaze that pierced through the fog, locking onto Tom. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to flee that terrible presence, but his body betrayed him, rooted in place by the raw intensity of fear as it loomed closer. "We need to turn back," one friend shouted, the tremor in her voice cracking like glass, fear surging through her as she instinctively took a step back. The ground seemed to pulse beneath their feet, almost as if it responded to the tension, to the panic curling within the space between them. "We can't," Tom retorted, the words leaping from his mouth, fueled by desperation. "If we turn back now, it'll only get stronger." The creature flickered, its form morphing into something decidedly human but twisted, wearing the faces of people they knew, twisted smiles stained with despair. Laughter echoed through the trees, suffocating and giddy, twisting the reality of friendships into something horrifying, a mockery of what should have been. Tom's heart raced, pounding against his ribs like a desperate drum as the creature bared its teeth, blending the line between friend and foe, until it became impossible to discern. "You can't escape," it hissed, voice dripping with malice, slithering around them like smoke, constricting. "You belong to the shadows now. Give in, let the darkness embrace you." The trees around them creaked ominously, their branches twisting into claws extending for the group, ready to snatch them into the depths of despair. Tom could feel the pressure in the air shift, a push against his chest that seemed to whisper promises of solace, an invitation to surrender. It would be so easy, so simple to relent and let the shadows wrap around him, to sink into nothingness, but the memories of laughter and love surged upward, fighting against that seductive pull. "No," Tom yelled, determination igniting within him, pushing back against the beast's influence. "We are not afraid of you." With every ounce of strength, he focused on the bond they shared, the way they had stood together through thick and thin. Vibrant memories flooded his mind. The warmth of a hug, the sound of shared laughter, the comfort found in confiding secrets under starlit skies. Those moments sparked like lightning, igniting a fire within him that began to illuminate the encroaching shadows. As if his defiance had unlocked something ancient and powerful, the light they had gathered together surged forth, breaking through the dark. It wasn't just their memories. It was the essence of who they were, pushing back against the darkness. The beast howled, an unholy sound that rang through the night, splintering the forest with its agony. The air crackled like fire, and Tom could feel the shadows retreating, swirling away from the light, even as they lashed back in fury, desperate to reclaim their hold. "Keep it together," Tom urged, willing his friends to draw on their strength, to remember the light they carried within. They stood closer, the warmth of their combined presence pushing against the chilling terror. Tendrils of darkness fought against them, but with each flicker of their hearts, the light burned brighter, the shadows whipping back in agony. But as the fight persisted, something darker stirred from the depths of the forest. A deeper growl, lower and more menacing, rumbled beneath them, like thunder rolling in from afar, sending vibrations through the very ground. Something more sinister than the shadows, older than the dark enclaves of fear that had tried to ensnare them. The underbrush rustled violently, and a hulking figure began to rise from behind the twisted trunks. It was larger than anything they had faced, blending with the darkness so seamlessly that it appeared to be forged from shadows, each movement a grotesque dance of malice, impossible to comprehend, as if every horror that existed had been interwoven into its being. "You think you can defy me?" Its voice was a dissonant echo, reverberating through the air like a funeral dirge for the lost. You think you can take from me what I've claimed? You are but flickers against my abyss, insignificant and fleeting. Tom's breath caught, his grip on the light faltering for just a moment as the creature loomed larger, dark waves rolling off it like a storm, almost extinguishing the fire they had ignited. But in that instant of fear, he sensed something in the air, a flicker of hope, a reminder that the strength of their bonds had brought them this far, thrumming in his chest like a heartbeat. They had to find a way through this to push back against an enemy that seemed insurmountable. Tom glanced at his friends, fierce determination igniting within him again. Together, he shouted, "We will face it." Together, each friend nodded, a light returning to their eyes, the unity of their spirits binding them against the dark. The forest screamed in defiance, and as the hulking creature surged toward them, they stood firm, hands gripping each other tightly, creating a barrier between the encroaching void and the flickers of warmth they carried within. The shadows writhed, battling against the growing light. But Tom felt the power of his friends surging forth, ready to confront the darkness, ready to unleash the love that intertwined their hearts against the malevolence that beckoned so tantalizingly from the abyss. They were ready, and they wouldn't let the darkness consume them. Not now, not ever. With a surge of resolve, Tom felt the light within him branch out, dancing against the consuming shadows. The creature paused, taken aback by the sudden brilliance, its grotesque features contorting with rage, and in that moment, the shadows surrounding them quivered, as if sensing the looming confrontation. The trees creaked ominously, their branches twisting in response to the brewing storm, and the very ground swelled beneath their feet, pulsing in rhythm with the creature's ominous growls. That dissonant voice sliced through the thick air, reverberating through the forest, thick with an ancient malevolence. You think you can defy the darkness? I will tear apart your connections, your bonds. You are nothing but a flicker in my realm of despair. As if answering its taunt, a cold wind whipped through the trees, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and decay. The shadows began to swirl faster, forming into shapes that twisted and coiled, reaching for them with claws formed from the essence of nightmares. Each shape seemed to pull from the deepest fears of the group. Faces they had long tried to forget writhed in the dark, mouths opening in silent screams. Tom's heart raced, each beat pounding like a battle drum, but he refused to waver. "We know what you are," he shouted against the howling wind, summoning every ounce of courage. "You're the embodiment of fear, but you have no power here." The echoes of his words seemed to resonate within the cold, damp air, igniting sparks in the swirling darkness. Behind him, his friends joined in, their voices mingling with his in a crescendo of defiance, each word like a flare cutting into the night. "We are more than what you can shape us to be." As their voices rose, so did the light surrounding them, a warm glow that pushed against the frigid air, illuminating grotesque forms only partially hidden in the shadows. Horrific, monstrous faces blinked into existence, a ghastly parade of terror, each more twisted than the last, eyelids drooping and skin stretched taut against sharp bones. But the more they clung to their unity, the more these visions of dread retreated, recoiling in the face of their determined resolve. But just as it seemed they could drive the darkness back, the hulking creature lunged forward, its form weaving like smoke, stretching impossibly to swallow the light flickering between them. The air thickened, a weight pressing down on their chests, suffocating in the frantic chaos. All at once, darkness engulfed them, squeezing tighter and tighter, like a vice, attempting to crush their spirits. "Stay together," Tom cried, gripping his friend's hands tighter, feeling their warmth battling against the encroaching chill. From the corner of his eye, shadows were seeping, pooling like ink ready to be spilled, thick tendrils wrapping around his ankles, trying to pull him down into a woven net of despair. The ground itself felt as if it were shifting, transforming into a surface that was alive, breathing and heaving like a great beast. Desperate thoughts whispered in Tom's mind, doubt clawing at him like the shadows around them. What if they were lost to the darkness? What if that ancient malevolence was too powerful, too cunning? But then he thought of the love that bound them, the laughter and trust that had forged their journey. That love became a shield, deflecting the grasp of terror that threatened to pull him away. Together, he shouted again, stars of hope lighting within him, illuminating the path even deeper into that horrid expanse. With fierce determination, they lifted their heads, and Tom felt the shared warmth of their hearts propel them forward. Rallying against the dark, he saw their light merging, a kaleidoscope of vibrant colors bursting forth, radiating against the oppressive void, pushing deeper into the forest. The creature howled, a bone-chilling sound that echoed through every corner of the woods, its eyes flashing like molten metal, burning with fury. You cannot win. You will return to me, and I will claim your souls. But in that instant, as the darkness surged with renewed ferocity, Tom glimpsed something in the shadows, a flicker of vulnerability, a crack in the dark facade that veiled the creature's heart. Something ancient lurked within its depths, something that had once known love, joy, and light. A flicker of humanity buried beneath layers of anguish and fury. "We know your pain," he shouted, voice steady against the chill. "We see you for what you are. You were not always this way." The shadows shivered, as if his words had struck a chord. Around him, his friends echoed that sentiment, their voices rising in a chorus of understanding. "We can help you. We're not afraid of your darkness. We want to bring you back." Hope sparked even in the depths of despair, and for a moment, the creature paused, its monstrous form trembling as if reconsidering the path it had taken. But just as Tom thought they could reach through that void, the forest shook violently, an earthquake of shadows erupting all around them. The air thickened once more, choking them with darkness as the hulking figure roared, pushing them backward. Branches snapped and fell, and the ground heaved underfoot, tearing apart the earth like a festering wound. The moment passed, severed by the creature's wrath. The shadows surged forward in a black tide, their shapes writhing and curling like serpents, forcing whimpers from Tom's friends. Fear clawed at every heart, choking the bright light they had ignited. But even then, Tom refused to give in. He could feel his heart pounding, feel the warmth of his friend's hands slipping slightly against the ice that began to settle in their bones. They could not let go. "Focus," he shouted, rallying his thoughts, drawing on every flicker of memory. The laughter, the warmth of friendship, the deep connection they had forged together. It coursed through his veins, a lifeline in a storm. "We're stronger together. We've faced fears before, and we've never walked away." As if in response, a wave of energy surged forth, revitalizing them, igniting the light even brighter, spilling over into the encroaching dark. The shadows around them flinched, the grasp of despair waning, releasing its insidious hold. Tom could see fear flickering in the eyes of the creature, those molten orbs shifting to something softer, something that long sought solace. "We can't let it take us," whispered one of his friends, her voice a breath above the rising cacophony. "Not now, not ever." Their connection pulsed with vibrant strength, mirroring the heartbeat of the forest around them as they pressed onward, each courageous step pushing deeper within themselves, drawing out the remnants of light they had shared, creating a bright tapestry of resolve that transcended the darkness closing in. And though the ground trembled beneath the weight of sorrow and ancient woes, the echoes of their past washed over them like a tide. Fiercely clinging to hope, they plunged ahead into the heart of chaos, knowing that together they could face whatever horror awaited them. With an unyielding surge, the light they created pushed against the darkness, illuminating the monstrous scene around them. They moved forward, step by trembling step, encompassed by shadows that writhed like serpents, trying to ensnare their ankles, pulling them into a cold abyss from which there would be no return. Grotesque faces emerged from the dark, twisted visages that mocked their every breath. Mouths formed into a cacophony of silent screams, eyes glinting with malice, yet somehow shaded with longing. The howling wind carried whispers, lost souls trapped within the creature's grasp. Join us, succumb to the dark. They beckoned, their voices chilling, reaching deep into the recesses of fears unearthed. Tom's heart thudded in his chest, heavy with dread, wanting to drown out the sorrowful calls that wafted around him. He could feel the pull, a seductive tide, calling him toward despair, toward surrender, promising an end to the struggle. But he shook his head, breaking free from the haze of uncertainty that the whispers sought to weave around him. "We will not give in," Tom shouted, as if his words could sever the mental threads of doubt that tangled in his mind. The unity of his friends pulsed around him, a warm glow that fought fiercely to spread against the creeping cold. He looked around, seeing their faces resolute, fear transformed into fierce determination. They held onto each other tighter, forming a chain of light that grew stronger with every heartbeat, each echo of their unyielding bond pushing back against the consuming void. The eerie figure quivered, its monstrous form flickering like a candle about to be snuffed out. The shadows around them seemed to shift, uncertain now, as if they were merely extensions of the creature's anger and intent to consume. An unsettling silence settled temporarily, a lull before the storm. Then, from the depths of the dark, a low growl resonated that shook the very ground beneath them, vibrating in their bones. "You dare to resist?" It thundered, voice layered with endless layers of rage and despair. "You will suffer the pain of your existence. You will lose everything." The wind screamed in revolt, swirling violently, uprooting the trees, sending debris crashing around them. The cacophony enveloped them like a thick fog, chilling their skin, and Tom could feel the sharpness of fear slicing through their shared light. But in that moment, he made a choice, a decision rooted deep within. He would fight, not just against the formidable darkness, but for the hope that remained flickering in the eyes of his companions. "We are not alone," he bellowed into the storm, voice laced with conviction. "We stand together against the shadows." With those words, he felt the energy swell, igniting a vibrant flash of connection traversing through their hands, reaching out and defying the chaos that sought to unravel them. The darkness responded, a monstrous wave of shadows crashing over them, tendrils curling and grasping like great claws, attempting to pull them apart. The shadows took on life, morphing into twisted figures, a terrifying blend of their nightmares. Memories of despair warped into grotesque mockeries, reminding them of their fears, their doubts, their failures. "Look closer," a whisper slithered through the air, chilling Tom to the bone. He recognized her voice, a shadow of someone he had lost long ago, a friend whose laughter no longer graced the world. "You can join us, embrace the dark, and forget your pain." His heart clenched, the visage before him eerily familiar, intentions clouded by sorrow. But he would not succumb. "No, your sorrow does not define you," he cried, pushing the words past the blocks of ice forming in his throat, anger boiling against the suffocating dread. Light sparked and flickered as his friends rallied, recalling their memories, each light swirling like stars realigning in a dark sky. A chain reaction ignited. Each pulse of their shared courage banished shadows, forcing them to retreat momentarily, their screeches echoing against the trees, bouncing off trunk and leaves, woven into a symphony of despair. The creature roared in fury, the earth beneath them trembling violently, and the branches overhead cracked, splintering like fragile glass beneath the weight of its anger. Shadows surged back, thicker, denser, rekindled with fury and fury anew, tightening like a noose around them. The tendrils began to wrap tightly around Tom and his friends, choking their shared light, promising to extinguish hope with every squeeze. "We can't let it win," a friend's voice cried, barely rising above the chaos. "We need to remember why we're here, the bonds that brought us together." And at that moment, suddenly, a spark ignited within him, an ember from their shared memories, each moment reminding him of the laughter, the support, the journeys they had taken together. Ghosts of the past danced in his mind, unearthing their shared joys like well-guarded treasure amidst the sorrow. Think of what we've fought for, Tom urged, his voice a steady anchor amidst the tumult. Think of the light. And together, they began to remember the warmth of summer days, late-night conversations, dreams shared beneath a canopy of stars. They laughed in the face of terror, allowing joy to break through the chains attempting to bind them. As those memories unfurled, the light surrounding them pulsed more rapidly, filling them with strength, each flicker reflecting their tenacity. The shadows hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty sparking in the depths of the creature's eyes. And for a moment, they glimpsed a shift, a fleeting shadow of its former self, a hint of the being that had once walked in light. Tom seized the moment, rallying his friends to push back once more, their hearts synchronized, their lights exploding into a brilliant wholeness. Together we shine brighter, Tom shouted, feeling the luminescence of their connection washing over them, enveloping them like a protective cocoon, unfurling against the dark menace that enveloped them. The creature shrieked, a hair-raising sound that echoed between the trees, smashing into the rocky ground, and the shadowy forms shrank back. Darkness writhed, coiling with anger, attempting to reclaim the lost ground, but Tom felt the pull of unity anchoring him. The woods took on an ethereal glow as the surge of their collective light broke through. Tendrils of shimmering warmth began to curl around them like vines, seeking to protect and fortify, pushing back against the ravenous void longing for power. But the creature, furious, would not relent. "You cannot escape your fates," it growled, spitting those words like venom. "I will take everything you care for." Tom felt that threat resonate deep within him, a crystal-clear fear lurking in those foreboding words. Yet as the shadows writhed against their light, he knew this was not the end. The creatures in the dark may be formidable, but they were not invincible. With every heartbeat, they gathered their strength, the glow of friendship fueling their resolve as they stepped further into the embrace of chaos, ready to confront whatever horror awaited them, together. With a resolute heart, Tom led the charge deeper into the dark, every fiber of his being ignited with the collective strength of his friends. Together they surged forward, a beacon of light in the encroaching night. The creature, a distortion of ragged shadows and lost hopes, twisted and writhed, sensing the core of their determination. It roared, its voice echoing through the forest like thunder, causing branches to snap and the earth beneath them to tremble. "You have no power here," Tom yelled, drawing on the resonating courage that pulsed through their bond. The otherworldly shadows churned around them, coiling and snapping like angry serpents, but the light they held united them, pushing through with an intensity that began to pierce the dark. Faces of torment and agony swirled within the shadows, reflecting past mistakes and regret, each visage a grotesque reminder of what they could lose. Yet instead of succumbing, Tom and his friends began to chant, their voices weaving together into a melody strong enough to shatter the oppressive darkness. The creature contorted, a mass of swirling forms, desperately trying to snuff out their resolve. But with every chant, every syllable shared between them, the shadows recoiled, reforming into twisted shapes of panic. Tom could see its eyes, the molten core of anguish behind the dark facade, and in that moment, he felt a pang of sorrow. This creature, a puppet of the shadows, was lost within its own despair, just as they had been at times. "You're not alone," he called out, voice ringing with unexpected compassion. "We see you." The shadows hesitated, momentarily dropping their assault. Whispers of doubt echoed around them, calling to Tom's dark past and fears. Faces flickered, lost friends, missed opportunities. They clawed at him, a tempest of guilt and sorrow threatening to drown him. But he stood firm. "We choose to fight," he whispered fiercely, feeling the strength of his friends beside him. "We choose to live." And as if answering that resolve, a surge of raw light, a blinding wave of hope, erupted from their hearts. The shadows recoiled, retreating as wisps of darkness frayed into the night. The creature shrieked, a sound filled with both rage and a haunting echo of despair. and for the first time, Tom felt fear seeping into his bones. But they were stronger. The tendrils of their light wrapped around the creature, pulling it into their warmth. And as they did, Tom saw the shadows begin to peel away, revealing the essence of something once beautiful shrouded in grief. "It doesn't have to be this way," Tom urged, fighting against the tremors of doubt that threatened to grip him. "Let us in. We can find a way back to the light together." Slowly, the creature's form sagged, twisting from monstrous terror into something softer, more human. The rolling shadows faded, revealing memories of laughter and life, a ghostly reflection of those moments lost to the darkness. It was an agonizing process, watching the creature struggle between worlds, wails echoing through the landscape. They held onto the light they had forged, their connection unwavering. And then, in a moment of exquisite understanding, the darkness around the creature shimmered, changing. Streaks of light began to mingle among the shadows, a dance of chaos and peace intertwining, fighting for prominence. Together, Tom whispered, feeling the weight of his friend's hands tight around him, the warmth spreading through him amidst the chilling air. "We can do this." They leaned in closer, pouring their light into the space between, unifying their hearts, their hopes, their wounds. "Come back with us." The creature hesitated, wide eyes reflecting the glimmering light of their connection. Sorrow clung to it like a shroud, but also the flicker of something new. With a final desperate roar, the darkness took one last lunge, trying to consume them. But the blinding warmth they created surged stronger, erupting outward and swallowing the shadows whole. As Tom and his friends closed their eyes, squeezing one another's hands tightly, they felt a heavy weight lift, a suffocating darkness dispelling like mist under the sun. The creature drew breath, and in that spiral of light, it shifted, breaking free from the tormented dark, morphing into a brilliant figure, shrouded in gold glimmer and joy. It extended a hand, and in one radiant moment, the connection wove them all together, a tapestry of light, healing, and unity. "Thank you." The voice of the creature reverberated throughout the forest, a sound of harmony interlaced with the history of pain, but lighting the path towards redemption. The shadows began to scatter into nothingness, retreating back into the depths of the void, leaving only purity and warmth behind. As the dawn broke, the forest transformed. Trees shone with life, the air rich with the scent of renewal. Tom and his friends emerged, hands still intertwined, basking in the brightness that lingered like an echo of their victory. They were forever changed, souls entwined with the very fabric of hope, having faced the dark together and finding light in the most profound way. Even as the remnants of shadows faded, they knew they would always have the light of their friendship to face whatever twisted realities lay ahead. The night had tested them, but in the end, they forged a bond stronger than darkness, one they would carry in their hearts for all eternity.